They were still standing there taking pictures of it, but I'm glad because now we get to see it and it gives us just a little more insight into what happened that day. Number 2. This photo is of a man named Chris McCandless, who may be better known as Alex Supertramp. Chris was a traveler who inspired the book and movie Into the Wild, which were created to follow the story of his life, and more specifically his final great Alaskan adventure. This photo is unfortunately the last photo taken of Chris while he was on this Alaskan trip, and he ended up passing away in the wilderness. A lot of people have speculated that this photo was taken as his sort of goodbye. It is highly debated how he died, so there isn't quite a concrete answer of what exactly happened to him. It is a very unfortunate end to such a young man's life, but he left quite a legacy. His story has inspired countless people and holds a special place in a lot of people's lives. He was a man who rejected conformity and materialism, and with his life and death he really left an important message for all of us to take a step back and remember what is really important. While the story has such a sad ending, there's also a lot of beautiful things that we can take from it. And in our number 1 spot today, this photo was taken by Fred Blackwell on May 28th, 1963, and is actually showing us a moment of protest. The 3 sitting at the counter are Joan Trumpor, Anne Moody, and their sociology teacher, John Salter. The reason why this photo is so important is because these 3 are sitting at a white-only counter at Woolworth's Five and Dime store in Jackson, Mississippi, while being assaulted by an angry mob. People are throwing condiments at them and I'm sure saying some pretty nasty things. The 2 students went to Tougaloo College, which was a black college that ended up being at the core of the civil rights movement in Mississippi. It's amazing to see how brave they are, and a photo like this really is such an important message for us to remember today.
Where you at? Did you get it?
Starting off this countdown, we have the secret entrances. Just last year, a man claimed to have found 3 hidden entrances that lead to Area 51. He discovered this after using Google Earth. He compared images of the base from different time periods. In one particular area in 1998, there seems to be no roads or entrance. Satellite pictures of that same location in 2005, 2010, and 2013 show a road and a dead end with what looks like an entrance and tunnel carved into a mountain. In fact, at the dead end, there appears to be cars parked there. Seems unusual for people to just park there, because what is around for them to do? Wander the barren plain alone? No, they're parking their cars there and then entering Area 51 through this secret entrance. In our 9th spot, we have naked Prince Harry. Before Harry met Meghan, he was quite the wild royal and troublemaker. Back in 2012, naked photos of Harry partying up during his trip in Las Vegas got leaked online. Prince Harry was photographed playing a game of strip billiards with his friends in his VIP suite. In the photo, we see Harry holding his junk, while a naked girl stands behind him holding him. In another photo, we see the backside of Harry with his arms wrapped around the naked girl. I wonder what the Queen had to say when she saw these photos. Yikes. Coming in at number 8, we have Bill Clinton. It's no surprise that a number of high-up, powerful, wealthy individuals had ties with Jeffrey Epstein, including Bill Clinton. If you don't know the whole Jeffrey Epstein scandal, I suggest you look into it, but it's hella dark and disturbing. He forced a number of young individuals into doing things with him and his friends and anyone else with a lot of money. It's believed that Bill knew what Jeffrey was doing and was a part of some of it. Here is a photo of Bill with one of Jeffrey's victims, Shantae Davies. When the photo was taken, Davies was only 22 years old. She is seen rubbing Clinton's shoulders while they all wait for their plane to Africa in 2002. Apparently, it was Ghislaine Maxwell's idea for the young girl to help Bill out with his stiff back and give him a massage. Although Davies said that that's the most intimate that she got with Bill, it's still a very compromising photo of him. Having connections with Epstein in the first place tarnishes his reputation, one of the reasons why he has tried to bury this part of his past. Moving on, at number 7, we have topless Mark Zuckerberg. Okay, well, seeing a guy topless is nothing scandalous, but a picture of Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, shirtless? Well, apparently Mark was really embarrassed when this photo got leaked, and his coworker that leaked it accidentally got in trouble. Let's take a look at this photo, shall we? Sorry, Mark. This photo was taken at some weird private party. Shirtless Mark is surrounded by a number of other shirtless dudes. Like I said, it's not even a bad photo, but Mark was not happy about it going around. Apparently, it was accidentally posted by Facebook's Director of Engineering, Andrew Bosworth. As soon as he realized it had been leaked, he took it down immediately, but the internet was too fast and screenshotted it. In our sixth spot, we have the Bohemian Grove. The Bohemian Grove is a secret and controversial club that meets in the California woods every year. The club consists of a number of rich men. Among the attendees are past and present presidents, government members, and business leaders. It's kept very hush-hush. What happens at this retreat thing stays there. Some say it's a cult, where they do human sacrifices among other illegal and spooky things. But since no one has yet infiltrated the club, we still don't really know what goes on there. But there are some photos that have gotten leaked, like pictures of a number of the men in weird cloaks surrounding a burning effigy, to pictures of some of the members seated around a huge dining table. Since this club is so controversial, I doubt the members want their pictures from the club leaked. We are now at our fifth and halfway mark with Mark Zuckerberg surfing. I'm pretty sure you all have seen this photo of Mark surfing in Hawaii. It became a viral photo and a meme. Why? Well, because Mark has way too much sunscreen on his face. He really packed that on all over his face, and it left a very noticeable white cast. I mean, good for him for taking sun safety seriously, and you know, skin cancer is no joke. But due to the fact that he became a laughingstock over the photo, I bet he didn't want anyone seeing those photos in the first place. Plus, it kind of ruins his reputation. Like, it's hard to take him seriously with that photo floating around, and all the jokes associated with it. Coming in at number 4, we have Kate Middleton's topless pictures. Looks like Harry isn't the only one in the royal family to stir up some controversy. Back in 2012, Kate and William were in France vacationing when the paparazzi took some photos of the pair. In the photos, Kate was suntanning and she was topless. The paparazzi then sold the photos to the French magazine Closer, who then published them. Obviously, she and the rest of the royal family were horrified and took legal action. In the end, the magazine company had to pay 100,000 euros in damages for publishing the photos. And 2 staff members were fined an additional 90,000 euros to pay to Kate Middleton and Prince William. Pretty sure every copy of this photo has been destroyed. And for Kate's sake and privacy, let's hope it stays that way. In our third spot, we have Barack Obama's party. I didn't know Barack Obama was a big partier, but these photos prove otherwise. Just this year, Barack Obama threw a huge birthday bash for his 60th birthday. But it caused quite the uproar. Why? Well, photos from that night show a room packed full of maskless people in the middle of the pandemic. Especially since Barack is a huge political figure, you would think that he would set a good example, or at least practice what he's been preaching. Either way, Obama was under fire after photos of him dancing at this epic party were posted. In our second spot, we have Prince Harry's inappropriate costume. Prince Harry was quite the royal troublemaker back in the day, making headlines with a number of scandals. Well, back in 2005, Harry was seen dressed up in a Nazi soldier uniform while attending a costume party. The costume consisted of wearing a red Nazi insignia on his left arm. Here are some of the photos from that night. Not only that, but he was photographed drinking and smoking in the outfit, which looks really freaking bad on the royal family. In the end, Prince Harry did apologize, saying, and I quote, "I am very sorry if I caused any offense or embarrassment to anyone. It was a poor choice of costume and I apologize." Let's just say that this is definitely one picture that Harry certainly wants to leave in the past. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Bill Gates. Bill Gates is another wealthy man who had ties with Jeffrey Epstein. Photographed here is a picture of the two at Jeffrey's Manhattan mansion in 2011. Over the years, Bill has denied his relationship with Jeffrey, but the two were friendlier than he likes to admit. Apparently, the first time they met was in 2011 after Epstein pleaded guilty to some of his crimes. But that didn't stop Bill from becoming close with him. He then proceeded to hang out with him on a number of different occasions. He went to Epstein's Manhattan town at least 3 times, one of those times being late at night. What were you doing there, Bill, so late, huh? He also flew on Epstein's plane a couple of times. In 2019, Gates said, and I quote, "I met him. I didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him." Which clearly wasn't the truth because they met repeatedly. But anyways, it seems like Bill doesn't want anyone to see any photos that he has with Jeffrey. He doesn't want to get roped into the legal and disturbing things that Epstein was into.
We are Wordens, your go-to wholesale textile supplier. Whether you're looking for high-quality t-shirts, polos, cozy sweats, bag collection,
Coming into number 10, we have Up Close and Personal with Area 51. In September 2017, YouTube channel UFO Seekers did just that. They saw UFOs. What did they find? Well, you will see. Tim Lee and Tracy Doyle hiked up Tickaboo Peak, a 1.4-mile high mountain 25 miles opposite the military base. The duo used telescopic lenses to get the clearest possible photos of the secret base ever taken from outside by just a civilian. Although you can't see little aliens running around or anything, there are plenty of vehicles to be seen, plus an expansive building and water towers. It isn't too scary, but the video is super interesting, how they got there and everything, and actually it's quite tense. Had they been caught by authorities taking long lens images, then they really could have been in trouble. The video is 18 minutes long, but here is a clip of the YouTubers finding the base. The video has had over 2.4 million views. Perhaps the Kyles are watching it to swat up for their attack planned on the 20th of September. Kyles.
In our number 9 spot, we have The Woman in the Attic. Well, the story behind this picture is extremely chilling, so chilling that I definitely threw on some show tunes and sang for a moment after reading about it. In case you're curious, Wicked is always my musical of choice. Speaking of Wicked, this was not planned, I swear. The woman in this photograph is a real woman who had a wicked mother who locked her in an attic for 25 years. An anonymous tip to the authorities in 1901 was how she was found, 55 pounds in a room filled with feces, old meat, and insects. Thankfully, she was okay health-wise, but mentally, as you can expect, not so much. This is a photo of her and how she was found. Truly horrible to see. While looking at this photograph and seeing her long brown hair, I'm now convinced that this is where Disney got some of their inspiration for the movie Tangled. There are way too many similarities that I'm sure they took and made 1,000 times more light and cheery. In our number 8 spot, we have For Sale. This is a photograph from 1948 that honestly at first glance I thought it to be some kind of joke. Maybe the young ones in the photograph were being bad and the mom was threatening to sell them. You know, the old tricks parents would play when children's aid wasn't a phone call away. Anyways, apparently this is a picture of something very real that was happening due to poverty at the time, and that instantly makes the picture chilling and sad. Apparently the mother and father of these young ones, Mr. and Mrs. Chalifo, needed money desperately, and so they sold them. It was said that the mother was paid to stage this photo, and perhaps that is why there is an air of phoniness to it, but no later than 2 years after, all of their young ones had been sold to families. In our number 7 spot, we have On the Brink of Death. A man by the name of Robert Overacker decided that he wanted to raise awareness for the homeless. And how was he going to do it? Oh, by doing a stunt that would attract the masses. He was going to jet ski over Niagara Falls. And this is a picture of him doing just that. This was the last picture of him taken as he fell to his death, as his parachute did not open as planned. Apparently one of the police officers at the Niagara area has said that it would have been like hitting cement as he fell 180 feet. Wow. What a haunting photo to look at. He was only 39 as well. This is why I will never skydive because, well, there isn't a 100% survival rate, so there's that. Also, I'm a chicken. So there's also that. In our number 6, we have the two-headed dog. I always feel like puking when I see this photo. It is just the most inhumane thing ever, and it makes my heart hurt to look at. This is a photo that was taken in the 50s of the Soviet scientist Vladimir Demikov and his science experiment, the two-headed dog. He beheaded the head off of one of the dogs and attached it to the other dog. He sewed their circulatory systems together and connected their vertebrae with plastic strings, and after the surgery was completed, both of the heads could hear, see, smell, and act as a normal dog would. The dog survived only 4 days before passing away. This scientist's research led to the creation of transplants, but wow, was this a horrible thing to have done. Also, he apparently only did this experiment due to boredom, so perhaps my anger stems from having learned that. In our number 5 spot, we have Mary Reeser. This is a picture of a blown up Mary Reeser. This picture showcased quite the story from its time. On July the 2nd of 1951 in St. Petersburg, Florida, a woman by the name of Mary Reeser somehow caught fire, and all that remained was a part of her skull and her left leg surrounded by her ashes. She was discovered by her landlady, and after the investigation, the police were unable to say as to how she could have possibly caught fire. It was this story where the idea of spontaneous human combustion was theorized, but scientists today say that they are almost certain that this could not be the case. But what is weird is that most of her house was largely devoid of fire damage, so it makes no sense. I suppose we shall never know, and this picture will continue to scare us till the end of time. In our number 4 spot, we have the truck stop killer. In the 70s, there was a killer by the name of Robert Ben Rhodes who would pick up while he was driving his commercial truck across America, and then he would kill them. He was suspected to have taken the life of over 50 women. Anyways, when he was finally caught, a picture of a girl named Regina K. Walters was found along with many other photos of women inside Robert's home. This photo is believed to be taken right before he killed Regina. Man,
Too few books were about my people. Where's our representation?
Would you read an excerpt?
Yo, Sharonda, girl, you be pregnant again?
Critics are calling American fiction a masterpiece.
I'm sure white people.
oh man, how horrible. This is quite chilling to look at. Sometimes I'm so surprised when evidence like this is leaked to the public. This must have been haunting for her family and friends to see. In our number 3 spot, we have the Radium Girls. This is another chilling photo of a girl that was a part of the Radium Girls, which were a number of women known for working at factories in the 20s where they were exposed to so much radium that they actually would come home glowing in the dark. Unfortunately, the prolonged exposure caused them to have a series of problems, such as their jaws began to swell up and fell off, their vertebrae would collapse, and eventually they passed of cancer. So knowing that this is a pic of one of those women makes this picture so much worse than it looks. However, it does already look like a scary picture of a woman in pain. Pretty scary to think about the amount of people working in factories today or working with technology that might bring about future death that we haven't been able to predict yet. In our number 2 spot, we have Annalise Michel. Yeah, this picture will definitely give you the heebie-jeebies even without knowing the backstory. But what if I told you that this is a pic of a woman that was believed to be possessed by the devil? Yeah, this photo just got 100 times scarier, didn't it? Yeah, well, this is a photo of a young lady by the name of Annalise, and she was a pretty devout Catholic German and grew up in the 60s. She was completely normal until she suddenly started hallucinating, eating spiders, routinely convulsing, and just drinking her own urine. She claimed that the devil was possessing her, and she would later go on to have 67 exorcisms. Nothing worked, and she ended up passing away from malnutrition at the age of 23. Her tale is what inspired the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Yep, deeply chilling. In our number 1 spot, we have the Pioneer's Defense. Save the best for last. This is probably one of the creepiest photos that I have ever seen. This is a historical image taken by the Russian photographer Viktor Bula in 1937. If it isn't creepy enough without the explanation, here's the explanation. These are people that were part of a Soviet youth group called the Young Pioneers, and they are wearing gas masks because they were in the middle of a military preparation drill, as this was during a time when Joseph Stalin was the dictator and no one knew if death was around the corner. Yikes. Sometimes I am so thankful to be alive right now. Even though it does seem as if we're going through a bit of a mental war in this day and age, a physical war is way scary to think about being a part of.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have The Visitor. This one comes from a Reddit user called Fan and Depressed. They posted this picture with the caption, "Got a notification from my smart home app in the middle of the night saying your doorbell detected a visitor." That's all he put, and that's all that was needed. He posted it to the creepy subreddit, but it has gained over 34,000 upvotes. One of the top comments said, "Why are you doing this? Because you were home." That's a quote from the movie Strangers, where some twisted home invaders give their reason for terrorizing a woman in her home. It's a great movie, and yeah, it does remind me of this too. Can you imagine how terrifying it would be to see this on your phone app in the middle of the night? There was no follow-up story to this. I just hope they were alright.
Coming in at number 9, we have Even Closer, if you can imagine it. This is one of the closest ever images taken of Area 51. It was taken from a light aircraft and is in the Nevada Aerospace Hall of Fame right now. Here we can see a much closer overview of the whole compound, something that would have been classified just a few years ago. Coming into number 8, we have the airstrip. In 2013, some documents about Area 51 were declassified, although many criticised the response to the Freedom of Information request to having been underwhelming, featuring heavily redacted information. Nonetheless, in 2016, the US did permit Google Earth to photograph the area, which had previously been a no-fly zone. Now you too can view the facility from a bird's eye view. You can check it out and see what's going on, although from very high in the sky. From browsing Google, around 12 miles north of Area 51, there seems to be an unexplained airstrip coming in around 1 mile long. There is also a visible cluster of buildings at the end of the strip, which is kind of baffling. We've got no idea what's being tested here. According to intel from the website Life Science, though, it is thought that the space could be used to test reconnaissance drones. Coming into number 7, we have the Paradise Trailers. Area 51 used to be colloquially known as Paradise Ranch in order to make it sound more appealing to families of workers. I suppose it's a lot to ask a person to relocate to the middle of the desert, so why not rebrand the place Paradise and make it sound more appealing? An image has been released of the Paradise era showing a number of trailers at the facility. Is this where families lived, or was it home to aliens? It's kind of cool seeing how things used to be in its heyday, assuming its heyday's over. We just don't know. Alright, coming into number 6, this is the big one. It is the alien autopsy. The alien autopsy was reportedly shot in Area 51 and depicts the aliens that were transported to the facility from Roswell after the 1947 crash. The crash was said to have been of a flying disc UFO and was said to have contained wounded aliens. The video was released in 1995 by Ray Santilli, who said that the footage had been supplied to him by a former military camera technician who wanted to remain anonymous, obviously. Let's have a little look at the footage, shall we? That is a dead alien right there, right? But like, is it? The footage absolutely blew up in 1995, but people were quick to call it a fraud. In the end, Santilli claimed that yeah, only part of the footage was real. He said that only a few frames from the original footage were there, but they were there. He also said the rest had been replicated and was a reconstruction of footage he had, but was damaged. Sounds likely. Coming into number 5, we have the Roswell rescue. Footage claiming to be from the Roswell fallout surfaced on the internet in 2015 and alleges to show agents holding alien corpses and taking them on a stretcher. Have a little look. I don't know, it kind of looks a bit sketchy, right? Can we get another look? I guess it was 1947, so we can't expect too much film-wise, but I'm not sure this is quite the smoking gun we were looking for. The video has had around 160,000 views on YouTube, but the like to dislike ratio suggests that some people may not be too convinced as to its authenticity. One of my favourite comments on the video comes from Mr. Saturday Night Special, who wrote, "This has to be real. Everyone knows when you travel across the universe, you don't wear clothes. Just ask Chewbacca. He'll tell you, you're right. You know what? Are we the only species that like to cover our modesty? All of these aliens crashing, like, Where are their little alien suits? Come on. Coming into number 4, we have Kodak confirms, allegedly anyway. In 2014, a UFO expert, Tom Carey, was sent images from a woman who wished to remain anonymous, but claimed that she had worked with the Secret Service. The image was reportedly taken at Area 51 following the Roswell crash and seems to show a bug-like alien. Let's have a look, shall we? The image seems to support what a number of people who used to work at the Area 51 have said about the facility, including Robert Lazar and staff members from the esteemed Lockheed Martin firm. But like seriously, come on, is this an actual image of an alien? Can we trust anything in the age of Photoshop? It seems that Carey thought of that and sent the image to Kodak themselves, who were able to confirm that it was taken in 1947. Again, allegedly. If they sent him a letter saying this, then I haven't seen it. When speaking to the press, Carey said, "What's interesting is that the film is dated in 1947. We took it to the official historian of Kodak up in Rochester, New York, and he did his due diligence on it, and he said that yes, this film strip and the slides are from 1947. It's 1947 stock. From the emulsion on the image, it's not something like's been photoshopped today. If Kodak did call this authentic, I haven't seen any certification." Coming into number 3, we have another alien, of course. In 2012, Chicago videographer Adam Dew received a call from his former business partner Joseph Beeson. He claimed that he had something to show him, and boy did he. Beeson had a private disposal unit sister, and she'd come across a box of photographs that seemed to have been taken by someone close to President Eisenhower. He was in a number of the images himself, as were Bing Crosby and Clark Gable. 2 of the images she had been tasked with disposing were absolutely outrageous. Get a load of them for yourself. That's right, it is a small withered brown body of an alien in a glass case. And this was all among the images of the president, which is pretty crazy. The images were found in the garage of a woman named Hilda Blair Ray near Sedona in Arizona. Now the pair did believe that the images were linked to Area 51 and Roswell. They sent the images to none other than Tom Carey. Tom once again believed that the images looked just like what witnesses had described in the Roswell crash. Let's have another look, shall we? It really does kind of look like an alien wrapped in some kind of cloth, but unfortunately for Tom Carey, the image turned out to be of a mummified corpse of an Aztec child and not a secret leak from Area 51. Our final 2, I have to say, are pretty convincing. It's not alien stuff, but I do think that these are secret pictures from Area 51. Coming into number 2, we have the strange plane. Here's an image of something that looks like a strange aircraft, or something reportedly taken at Area 51 anyway. It is known that the United States Air Force is present at the facility, and several spy planes have been developed there, including the U-2 spy plane and the SR-71 Blackbird, and possibly others like the rumored Aurora project. So, what is the plane in this image? I don't actually know. Could it be one of the alien aircraft that allegedly whistleblower Bob Lazar talked about reverse engineering? Or is it another spy plane? Finally, coming into number 1, we have an image of a secret plane crash covered up. It seems an A-12 spy plane, possibly the one pictured above, crashed in 1963 after taking off from the secret airbase. The crash happened in Wendover, Utah, when Area 51 pilot Ken Colmer was testing the plane's subsonic engines at low altitude. The pilot ejected from the plane crash, after which he was subjected to hypnosis and doping to make sure that he relayed the incident and how it occurred honestly and truthfully. Here are the previously classified images of the crash. Now, as you can see, vehicles raced to recover the wreckage, which was extremely sensitive to the United States Air Force. It seems a government sanitation team was deployed to remove all traces of the spy plane. To me, that sounds very, very strange. So too does it that they kept the images of this plane crash a secret for such a long time. Do you think it really was a spy plane that crashed, or, given the response, something much more sensitive?
Overwhelmed by finally setting up your business idea or making your side hustle official? Then it's time to get busy. Busy makes forming a company easier and more affordable than ever. Don't sit on the sidelines. Start your business today at busy.com.
In our number 10 spot, we have the Moko Mokai collection. Well, we are starting off strong with a truly scary and disturbing photo. This is a photograph of a man named Major General Horatio Gordon Robley, who had a collection of 35 heads that he stole from the native Maori people. Apparently in New Zealand, there were people called Maori that preserved the heads of fallen people. The heads were chopped off, boiled, smoked, dried in the sun, and then dipped in a shark oil before being displayed like a trophy. Whoa. They are known as the Moko Mokai. Anyways, these heads were robbed by the British when they moved into New Zealand, and this pic is one of the guys who stole them. Honestly, the man feels just as chilling to look at as the heads. Does anyone else agree? It's probably because he's holding something that looks like it could be a sharp object that might have helped in the chopping process. I don't know. Could be just me.
Next up at number 9 now, we have the mummified captain. This is the disturbing story of Manfred Fritz Bajorat, a German man who was found in his boat by 2 fishermen off the coast of the Philippines. He was dead. His corpse had been preserved by dry ocean winds, hot temperatures, and the salty sea air. It could not be determined how long he had been dead for, but he hadn't been seen by anyone for 7 years. He'd actually been sailing the world on his yacht for the past 20 years. It's thought that from the way he was sitting, death was unexpected, perhaps from a heart attack. The police said there was no evidence of a second person aboard, and no weapon was found on board the yacht. Moving on to number 8 now, we have Home. This is a 1948 picture of a girl who grew up in a Nazi concentration camp. Now, she was asked to draw what home was, and this is what she drew. The photograph was taken by David Seymour in a home for emotionally disturbed children located in Warsaw. Not much is known about the girl other than her name, Teresa. The swirling lines are a stark reminder of horrors of the Holocaust. More than 1.5 million Jewish children were killed in the Holocaust. Those that survived often ended up like Teresa, lost, shocked, and unable to grasp a simple concept like home. Moving on to number 7 now, we have Obsession. George Karl Tanzler was a radiology technician from Germany. He moved to Florida where he married Maria de Hoyos, a local Cuban-American woman. She died of tuberculosis 5 years later, despite his best efforts to save her. He wouldn't accept her death though. After her funeral, George dug up Maria's body and took her to his home. He attempted to preserve her. This is the picture of his efforts. He attached her bones together with wire and coat hangers and fitted her face with glass eyes. He replaced her skin with silk cloth soaked in wax. He gave her a wig and filled her insides with rags. He covered her in jewelry, and the smell was masked with copious amounts of perfume. Body was eventually discovered by authorities a full 9 years after he first removed her from her resting place. Next up at number 6 now, we have the catacombs. This is a very disturbing picture. Please look away now if you're sensitive to death and all that kind of thing. This is the story of Masha, a Ukrainian woman who went out with a large group of friends to celebrate New Year's Eve in 2005. It was a foggy night with temperatures around freezing. The group stumbled into the Odessa catacombs, an ancient tunnel and cave system that spans for over 1,500 miles. Somehow, Masha became separated from her group and got lost in the dark. She seems to have wandered for days with no food or water before slipping into a coma and then death. Her body wasn't discovered for months until this picture was taken by some local boys who found her. Still, she wasn't retrieved by authorities for a further 2 years. When the story was shared on Reddit, people tried to imagine how terrifying it must be to be lost in the dark like that, pitch black darkness, unable to see any difference between your eyes being closed and open, and totally alone. Moving on to number 5 now, we have shell-shocked. In World War I, there were hundreds of thousands of soldiers who got shell-shock, a type of PTSD brought on from the endless bombardment they had to endure. Tens of thousands of soldiers were treated for the disorder. Victims were said to have a 1,000-yard stare, looking into the distance as their mind went blank. Here is a famous picture from a soldier during the Battle of the Somme, a battle which killed 3 million men. This man appears to be suffering from shell shock. He has a crazed look in his eyes that is often associated with those who had shell shock. It's an image that has become increasingly associated with war, especially the hell that was World War I. Next up at number 4 now, we have the subway. In 2012, the New York Post ran a story with this picture. It was of Ki Suk Han, a 58-year-old man who was pushed onto the tracks by a stranger. He was fatally struck by a train seconds later. The suspect was 30-year-old Naeem Davis, who confessed to pushing the innocent man onto the tracks. The picture shocked New Yorkers and people around the world. Why was someone taking a picture instead of trying to help? Should the New York Post even have ran that story and published that picture? What do you guys think? Next up at number 3 now, we have Madame Violet. This is a picture of Violet Spears, otherwise known as Madame Violet. She was the leader of a group of real-life vampires in Edinburgh in the late 19th century. They were called the Hive. They became known as lovely but dangerous partiers, seducing men and women with drugs and alcohol, and then making them donate their blood to them, so to speak. Some of the victims even joined the Hive, and she became their leader too. In 1882 and 1884, she was apparently voted the scariest woman in England, even though she never left Scotland. That's how scary scary she is. She scared another country she didn't even live in. Moving on to number 2 now, we have The Vulture and the Little Girl. On March 26, 1993, the New York Times shared a picture known as Struggling Girl. It showed a famine-stricken boy, initially believed to be a girl who had collapsed from malnutrition during a famine in South Sudan. In the background, a vulture waits patiently. These birds have a keen sense of death, and this one has its eyes on the boy. The picture shocked the world. The photographer, Kevin Carter, was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for his photography. He actually killed himself just 4 months later. The reasons are largely unknown, but many people speculate that pictures like this can drive anyone down a dark path. And finally, number 1 now, we have the Hiroshima shadows. When the US dropped a nuclear bomb on Japan's Hiroshima, over 100,000 people were killed. Some of them who were close enough were literally vaporized into thin air. The intense heat of the explosion caused what's now called nuclear shadows. The blast forever changed services because of the UV radiation. Services that were blocked by people looked different to its surroundings, leaving a sort of permanent shadow of the person who was vaporized. This is one of the most striking images for me. What appears to be an old person stood at the bottom of the steps. You can even see the cane in their hand. It's a shocking reminder of how destructive weapons of war have become, how quickly life can be snuffed out in an instant, leaving only a shadow behind.
My name's Eric. I am 39 years old. I've started thinking about getting Botox Cosmetic for the last couple of years. I just see myself on video calls all day, and I really start noticing the lines.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Hampton Court Palace ghost. In December 2003, security cameras at Hampton Court Palace in England had a problem with a fire door that just kept opening when nobody else was around. They decided to check the security tapes, and to their absolute horror, these are the images they saw. Some sort of skeletal figure opening the doors before retreating back inside. A spokesperson for the palace assured the public that this was not a joke, and they have not manufactured these pictures, saying they genuinely do not know who or what it is. Moving on now to number 9, we have Pogo the Clown. Now for many people, this picture by itself may be terrifying enough. It's a picture taken of Pogo the Clown, taken sometime in the 1970s. Even for an old picture, there's something not quite right about it. People just feel uncomfortable when they view it, and there may be a very good reason for that. The man behind the clown makeup is actually John Wayne Gacy, one of America's most notorious serial killers. During the 1970s in Chicago, he lured 14 young men and boys to his home and tortured them before killing them. He hid their bodies in the crawl space of his own home, where he lived with his wife and 2 children. They had no idea what was going on. By day though, he was Pogo the Clown, appearing at local children's parties to entertain them or potentially even scope them out. He was so popular that he even met the mayor, who thanked him for all the joy that he spread. In 1994, he was sentenced to death by lethal injection. One of his final quotes from an interview was simply, "The dead won't bother you, it's the living you have to worry about." Moving on now to number 8, we have Telling Grandin. That's the name of the old scrapbook where this picture comes from. Its 28 pages contain photographs collected by an Evanston, Illinois group during a visit by train to the New Orleans Carnival of 1903. Perhaps in person and viewed in the context of their own time, this picture of a woman in a dress and a mask would seem entertaining, I guess. Many people these days though feel quite the opposite about it. Some have described it as very disturbing, creepy and deeply unsettling. It's been over 100 years since this picture of a carnival goer was taken, and yet the picture has found its way into many lists like this and keeps people coming back to study it and examine why exactly it's so very creepy. For me though, it's those eyes, or rather lack of eyes. What do you guys think? Moving on to number 7 now, we have Omar. Of all the pictures in this video, I don't know many that seem as unassuming as this one when you first look at it. This is a picture taken in the town of Omar, Northern Ireland. It was taken on the 15th of August 1998, a day that would go down in history. Nobody in this picture knew that the red Vauxhall car parked right there actually contained a bomb inside. It was placed there by a splinter group of the IRA who opposed the ceasefire that ended the troubles in Northern Ireland a year before. They had phoned the police to tell them about the bomb so that that they could move people away. Warnings were inaccurate though, and police had inadvertently moved people towards that red car with the bomb in. Moments after this picture was taken, the 500-pound bomb went off. 29 people were killed, over 200 were injured. Incredibly, the man and the child in the foreground of this picture survived, but the person who took the picture was killed. Next up at number 6 now we have gas mask. There are rumors that this creepy picture comes from a small Japanese island where locals are forced to wear gas masks to protect themselves from the toxic fumes of a nearby volcano. In reality though, it appears to be a picture showing members of the Young Pioneers youth group in Soviet Russia donning their gas masks during a civil defense drill near Leningrad in 1937. The government-run group took this picture as a sign of strength, meant to show the whole world the efficiency and preparedness of the youth organization. For many people though, it's just a haunting image of faceless children staring you down. Coming in number 5 now, we have Tyler Hadley. I find this picture very disturbing. Again, it's one of those pictures that needs the backstory for you to truly understand how dark it is. The guy on the right is Tyler Hadley, age 17 at the time. He had sent a text out to his friends earlier that night, inviting them to a party at his family home in Port St. Lucie, Florida. He finished off the text by saying, "Don't worry, parents won't be here." That sentence is incredibly scary when you learn that Hadley had just beaten his own parents to death with a crawl hammer in their own bedroom. He then partied with his friends on the ground floor of the house. None of them had any idea what had happened. One of them actually took this now infamous picture with Hadley himself. He then told one of his friends what he had done. The friend found the bloody bodies in the bedroom and called the police. Tyler was sentenced to 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Moving on to number 4 now, we have ectoplasm. This picture is said to be from a medium in a trance while contacting the dead. The strange substance streaming across the picture is allegedly ectoplasm. For many years, photos like this were quite common, claiming to show ectoplasm oozing from orifices in the medium's body. They claim that spiritual entities drape this substance over their non-physical body, enabling them to interact in the physical and real universe. Among modern-day believers, though, this picture has become famous due to its mysterious origins. Nobody is quite sure who the onlooker is. Nobody knows who the spiritual medium is. Some people even speculate that they are not a willing participant in this, that they do not want to enter into the trance and speak to the dead. Either way, the striking picture is enough to jog anyone's imagination. Next up at number 3 now, we have the hidden mother. This is a picture of a very common practice back in Victorian times. Back then, early cameras had slow exposure times. They required the subject to stay still for a long period of time. Obviously, this is very difficult to do with children. They rarely sit still. If the family wanted to have a picture of just the children, this is what they would do, the hidden mother trick. The photographer would cover the mother in a shawl so they could sit there and hold their child still. It was a popular technique at the time, but it's left us with many creepy pictures like this. Moving on to number 2 now, we have Travis Alexander. This is the last ever picture taken of Travis Alexander. It was taken by his ex-girlfriend Jodi Arias while he showered. Moments after the picture was taken, she stabbed him nearly 30 times, severing his jugular vein. She then shot him in the head with a shotgun. A medical examiner later determined that he was likely already dead before the gunshot wound was inflicted. This had come after she had stalked him, accessed his Facebook account, and slashed his car tires. Some people have said that by zooming in on Travis's eye, you can actually see Jodi Arias before she attacked. She was charged with first-degree murder in 2013 and sentenced to life in prison. And finally, number 1 now, we have the vampire heart. This is the mummified heart of an alleged vampire called Auguste de la Grange. He was said to be responsible for the deaths of more than 40 people in the early 1900s in Louisiana. The victims were all found dismembered in their own homes. One thing the crime scenes all had in common was the distinct lack of blood present at the scene. After police efforts to catch the murderer yielded no results, locals began to believe that the murderer was actually a vampire. A local Catholic priest called Father Henry Yonte took it upon himself to bring an end to these murders. During his investigation, he claims to have met minions of the vampire who confessed that Auguste de la Grange was the head vampire. The priest confronted him in his home and drove a wooden stake through his heart. Today, his skeleton and heart can be seen at the Vampire Museum in New Orleans.
Number 10, Mount Pony. In 1969, the Federal Reserve built a 400-foot-long bunker in Virginia Virginia with steel reinforced concrete over a foot thick. It is also covered by multiple feet of dirt and surrounded by fences and guard posts. The computers within the facility are the central node for all American electric money transfers. Until the 1990s, it also served as an extra government facility. For many years after its creation, it stored around $1 billion to rebuild the American economy if it ever fell to a nuclear attack. Currently, it stores the archive of movies from the Library of Congress, but because of it being hardened against nuclear attack, many people believe that the facility is sitting ready to be used in a time of need. The government tries to prevent any photos of the facility being placed online, as having the layout of the facility become public knowledge would remove any secrecy and advantage in the future. Only a few photos of it can be found online, and they honestly look straight out of the back rooms.
Moving on to number 9 now, we have Bud Dwyer. He was a politician and treasurer for Pennsylvania who was exposed for receiving money from a computer technology company so that he would steer a government contract in their favor. He faced a sentence of up to 55 years in prison and a $300,000 fine. He arranged a news conference with dozens of reporters attending, although they were not told what the purpose of it was. Many expected him to just resign, but the reality was much more shocking. After a 30-minute speech, Dwyer produced a Magnum revolver. That's the moment this picture was taken, as Dwyer tried to warn reporters to not intervene. Before they could, Dwyer put the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger, killing himself instantly. Most media outlets chose to not show the full footage, and many newspapers just posted this now famous image. Moving on to number 8 now, we have the Cooper family photo. This is a fairly famous one that many of you guys may have seen. I know I've talked about it somewhere.
Welcome to Stickamule.
Man. The story goes, in the 1950s, the Cooper family of Texas bought an old house and moved into it. On their first night there, they took a photo of the mum and grandma posing with 2 kids at the dining room table. When they developed the picture though, this is what they saw. Some sort of dark body was falling from the ceiling behind them. People have been trying to figure out what's going on with this picture ever since it first started circulating online in about 2009. Others have said that the picture is a complete fake due to the lack of information about it, and also clues that it's been photoshopped. Still a scary one either way. Coming in at number 7 now, we have the schoolboy. This one was shared by Reddit user In the Lion's Mane. He said he comes from a small rural town near some mountains. One day an old school was being torn down. A family friend went there and he took this picture with his phone. He didn't see the boy standing there until later on. The whole family was freaked out beyond belief. Standing right there was what looked like the actual spirit of a little boy. His face was clearly defined, but his body began to fade around his torso until his legs just tapered away. What do you guys make of this one? Is this a former student rising up to say a last goodbye before his old school disappears forever? Next up at number 6 now, we have John Torrington. He was a British officer who took part in an Arctic expedition in 1846 but died of pneumonia aged 22. Nobody knew what happened to the crew until some of their graves were found on a remote Canadian island. In the 1980s, scientists dug through almost 5 feet of permafrost until they hit a coffin. They opened it up and this was staring back at them. The body of John Torrington, quite literally frozen in time. The eyes were open, still bright and blue. His skin was battered and bruised but barely decomposed. The Arctic climate had acted like a perfect freezer. Scientists took samples to study and then buried his body as they found it, where it could still look the same to this day. We have the Demon. This one has been circulating online for a number of years now, but the origins of it are a bit of a mystery. It was taken in a hospital room shortly before a patient died. You can just about make out the patient lying in the bed, but the most shocking thing is what's standing on the bed. Some sort of demonic figure hunched over with huge twisted limbs. Many who have shared the picture claim that it's not just some sort of demonic-like figure. They say it's an actual picture of a demon caught tormenting a patient and trying to take them to hell in the last few hours of their life. Next up at number 4 now, we have the Amityville ghost. This photo was allegedly taken inside the famous Amityville house in 1976. That house was the site of a brutal murder of a family, and many paranormal investigators have been drawn to it ever since. It features what appears to be a young boy peeking out of a doorway. The picture was taken by an automatic camera that took infrared pictures to capture the second floor landing during the night. This picture of the Amityville ghost boy has left some speculating that it could be the ghost of the murdered child of the family, John DeFeo, who had lived in the house with his family prior to the current occupants. Others say this is an accidental picture taken of one of the investigators, but it certainly looks like a little boy to me. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the Grand Canyon. This picture was posted to Reddit by user Zombie Gaddafi. He said it was a photograph of his uncle at the Grand Canyon. At first glance, it looks like a normal picture. That is until you notice the hooded man standing in the bushes. Neither the photographer or the uncle noticed the man standing there. In fact, they swear there was nobody else even in the area, leading many to believe that the explanation for this appearance must belong to the paranormal. Coming at number 2 now, we have the Phoenix Lights. In 1997, thousands of people witnessed floating lights all over the city of Phoenix. This was the famous event that really hasn't had much press ever since. Witnesses claim to have observed a huge arrow-shaped UFO containing 5 spherical lights, or possibly light-emitting engines on. Even the governor of the time who saw the lights described them as otherworldly. One UFO advocate claimed to have performed a spectral analysis of the photographs that apparently proved the lights could not have been produced by a man-made source. Explanations since have ranged from military flares to atmospheric conditions, and yes, of course, visitors from another planet. What do you make of them? And finally, number 1 now, we have Jeremy Bentham. He was an English philosopher known as the founder of modern utilitarianism. When he died in 1932, he left his body to science and then for it to be permanently preserved for display. It all went well except for his head. The story goes that the taxidermy process left his face looking horrifying after a while. As it was on display and the authorities didn't want to alarm people, his head was replaced with a wax substitute. For some reason though, they decided to put his real head on the floor between his own legs. This is the sight that visitors saw on their arrival before people realised that it's probably best to just store the scary looking head someplace else. Alright, and finally I'm going to do a bonus one now because I actually had too many, if you can believe it. This one is called Combustion. This is a shocking image from December 1966. It's the remains of the body of 92-year-old Dr. J. Irving Bentley. He was discovered in his Pennsylvania home by someone who was coming to read the meter. This is the scene they found. All that was left was Dr. Bentley's leg and slippered foot. The rest of him had been burned to ashes from an unknown internal chemical reaction. In the years since, many have held this picture up as a prime example of spontaneous combustion, a mysterious event in which some people seem to explode and burn on the spot for seemingly no reason at all. Maybe you have the explanation for this one though, I'd love to know. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the uninvited guest. This is a creepy picture originally posted to Reddit. The user said that everyone in this picture knew each other at the party. All the people you see in the light, well, everyone except for one single person. In case you haven't spotted it yet, take a look at the far right of this picture. There you can see a boy with glowing eyes. He's standing in the shadows and appears almost translucent. The person who took this picture said they posted it to Facebook the next day and asked every single other person in the picture if they knew who that face belonged to. No matter how hard they tried, none of them did. While some of them have chosen to forget the picture altogether, others who were there that night have never been able to forget that boy's face. They believe it's the spirit of a child from years before wanting to get in on the party. Ugh.
Number 9, Maid of Harlech. While secret government facilities are one thing, it can be hard to believe that it's illegal to photograph something that you might just stumble upon on an afternoon walk. A plane that was nicknamed the Maid of Harlech crashed off the coast of Wales back in September of 1942. The pilot lost control during a training exercise and the plane crashed, though the pilot did walk away in pretty good shape. The plane is under around 2 meters of water and only becomes visible when the tide conditions are just right. The wreckage has never moved in all this time, and while its actual location is kept under wraps, it is in a public area that we assume anybody can access. However, you may find yourself in some legal trouble if you saw it and try to take a photo of it. The Protection of Military Remains Act prevents the location of any military remains being publicly shared, so any photos of the plane that give away its location are quickly removed from the internet and are not allowed to be seen. Number 8, Tiananmen Square. While this image is not forbidden for the majority of us to look at, it is forbidden for around 1.5 billion people. In 1989, student-led demonstrations in support of democracy took place in Tiananmen Square in China, the protesters attempting to stop military movement on the location. The government of China then declared martial law, and they used their military alongside massive tanks to run down any protesters that tried to remain in the square. Because of the horrific nature of the event, the Chinese government has attempted to cover up the fact that the event in 1989 ever happened. Every year on the anniversary, they undertake a massive censorship campaign to ensure that nobody is talking about the event. Many people in the country have no idea that it ever even happened, but we have access to one of the most infamous images from the event, a protester standing in front of an advancing tank. While we can view it whenever we like, people in China are strictly punished if they ever even speak of what happened. Number 7. North Korea. Similarly to the censorship that takes place in China, North Korea often covers up the reality of what goes on in their country. But while they do hide it from their own citizens, they also hide it from any outsiders who may try to get a peek at how the country operates. Information going in and out of the country is strictly controlled to maintain their image, so if you ever want to visit, you'll probably have a pretty difficult time. Anyone who wants to enter the country must be accompanied by an escort, and you are only allowed to see pre-approved parts of the country, which are typically staged in order to look much better than the reality. While you may be allowed to photograph these areas, photographs of anything else will be destroyed and could land you in pretty serious trouble. The main thing they want to avoid anyone seeing is the major poverty in the country, with most families actually undertaking very hard labor jobs. There are also other rules, like how you are not allowed to photograph a statue from behind. So if you do manage to get one of these pictures, you're very lucky and very brave. Number 6. Iranian missile launch. One of the main things that governments all across the world like to cover up is their military power. They don't want you to know just how much power they're packing until it's already too late. In 2019, the Iranian government was conducting a missile test launch that went terribly wrong. It resulted in a large explosion that destroyed the whole facility they were operating out of. This occurred when tensions between Iran and the rest of the world were at an all-time high. So Donald Trump, of course, tweeted out a satellite image of the testing site. While it may seem like a normal picture, the United States military became furious and wished that the photo had never been released. This is because of just how clear it is. They didn't want people knowing the extent of just how powerful their satellite cameras are. From the image alone, people were able to find out the location and name of the satellite that took the photo. The government attempted to redact the image and prevent any more people from seeing it, but it was on Twitter and it was already too late. Number 5. Area 51. Area 51, the infamous government base in Nevada, was not even publicly confirmed by the government to exist until 2013. Honestly, way more recently than I thought it was. They stated that it was a military testing site, but a majority of the public believe that it's home to aliens and all evidence thereof. Because of the maintained secrecy surrounding the base, you are not allowed to fly in their airspace, and any pictures of the facility are pretty strictly prohibited. However, in 2020, one pilot managed to lie their way into getting the most up-close and clear footage of the facility like ever. In 2020, the private pilot named Gabriel managed to gain access to restricted airspace by telling them he just wanted to continue his quick route to the airport, them not knowing he was equipped with his GoPro to capture footage of the secret facility. He states how he didn't see any activity around the base, but we are fortunate enough to have the images that show even more of the base's layout, while the government is probably not too happy about the fact that this footage even exists. Number 4. Ai Arnagari. It is a military base in Greece that they seem fully determined to cover up and prevent anyone from knowing anything about it. While you can use Google Earth to see an aerial image of just about anywhere on the planet, there are a few areas that are blurred from your view, and this military base is one of them. It's located in central Athens, and while you can see the building that surrounds it, the full complex is completely pixelated and blurred out. Basically, all images and information about the facility is kept under wraps by the government. Some people believe that it's a military training facility for new recruits, but could also be their military command headquarters. Photos from ground level or of anyone entering or exiting the facility are strictly prohibited.
No matter how you slice it, trust Galvani, the mozzarella experts.
Number 3, Pine Gap. The United States government has multiple facilities that are used for collecting and storing secret intelligence. The Pentagon is probably the most well-known one. However, how publicly known the Pentagon is could be on purpose to distract from the other intelligence facilities that they're trying to hide from the public. One lesser-known one is the Pine Gap surveillance facility that is located in Australia, a crucial base for the United States surveillance of Asia. Because of its importance, they do everything they can to prevent any images of the base making it into public hands. This is because they don't want any information of its layout, operations, or abilities to be known by enemy states and the people that they are collecting information on. Unfortunately for them, it is still possible for the public to actually get pretty close to it, so there are a few images that can be found of the outside. Number 2, X-37 space plane. The United States military is constantly testing and experimenting with new things, and one of the main things that they have tried to improve in the past is military air travel. Obviously, they wouldn't want any information about these new things to get leaked, with the fear it may end up in enemy hands. One of their most secretive designs ever was the X-37 space plane, and it landed at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, the government attempting to prevent any images of this event being leaked. It's an autonomously piloted space plane and was landing there after completing a 2-year mission in orbit, 2 of them apparently being in service. While we do have pictures of what it looks like, its purpose and what technology and capabilities it has remains under wraps. Because of how secretive the government has been with this potential new spy plane, the images that we do have of it are pretty rare, and they're not too happy about the fact that we have them. Number 1, leaked military hardware. The United States government aren't the only ones who have had leaks of experimental military equipment. The Chinese military also had a similar situation occur, except they accidentally leaked it all on their own. In their magazine titled Modern Ships, they included an image of the new H-6N bomber. While it was purposeful to show off the ship, they didn't intend to show off the new design of the large projectile attached to the bottom of it, experts believing it was built to help with China's territory disputes. As soon as they realized what they'd done, the publishers retracted the image, but it was too late and it was already out there. So they tried to claim it was a computer-generated error, but more pictures leaked online of the actual jet in operation, matching the image in the magazine. The images hit the internet and they lost all hopes of trying to cover it up.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Amazon fire. The Amazon rainforest is incredibly important to our Earth as it represents over half of the planet's remaining rainforests. The Amazon comprises the largest and most biodiverse group of tropical rainforest in the world, with an estimated 390 billion individual trees divided up into 16,000 species. And that's just trees. That doesn't even scratch the surface of the plant life, the animal life, and the human life that call the rainforest home. That is why this photo that was taken in July of this year is extremely unsettling. In the summer of 2019, the Amazon was the focus of everyone's attention because large chunks of it had gone up in flames. 2020 ended up being an even worse year for the forest and fires, and unfortunately 2021 isn't any different. In 2020, it is said that fires blazed more than 19 million acres fires of the world's largest tropical rainforest, and 2021 might be even worse than that. That is a big problem for a multitude of reasons, one of them being that it is now realized that because of these fires, there are areas of the forest that are emitting more carbon than they are absorbing. That may not seem like a big deal, but the Amazon is one of the best defenses we have against climate change, so its health does affect us all, and it's something we should all care about very much. In our number 9 spot today, we have the radio telescope. This is a photo of what was once a secret, but is now considered a huge celebratory work. This photo was taken during the construction of China's 500-meter aperture spherical radio telescope. This huge dish was constructed in a natural depression in the landscape and is the world's largest filled aperture radio telescope. The design is absolutely novel, which is why, while the telescope was first proposed in 1994, construction didn't start until 2011. It first observed light in 2016, and after years of testing, it was declared fully operational in January of 2020. If you're interested in space, you'll know exactly why this is such a fascinating and exciting creation. This radio telescope can give us beautifully sensitive observations that could help in the hunt for gravitational waves and give us more information of the mysterious and fleeting blasts of radiation that are known as fast radio bursts. Every step in the world of space exploration could have some wild implications on our world, and it's all very cool. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Pentagon crash. We have all heard about the devastating September 11th, 2001 attacks, but some of you might not know that on that day, there were actually a few separate coordinated attacks, all a part of the same plan, and one of those attacks was on the Pentagon. This photo was previously classified but eventually was released by the US government, and it shows the absolute devastation that was done by the commercial plane that crashed into the Pentagon building. The plane was able to tear through all 5 rings that existed in the building. All of the people on board the plane that day, as well as 125 people that were in the building at the time, passed away in this horrible event. For obvious reasons, the initial photos of the Pentagon damage were withheld from the public or from circulating in the media, but now that they have been released, it just shows us all another side to that horrible, terrifying day. In our number 7 spot today, we have Operation High Jump. This photo was taken in the late 1940s during Operation High Jump. This was a United States Navy operation that was aimed to establish the Antarctic research base, Little America 4. It is said that the goals of this mission were to train personnel and test equipment in frigid conditions, determine the feasibility of establishing and utilizing bases in the Antarctic, as well as scoping out possible base sites, examining and amplifying the existing stores of knowledge of several different kinds of conditions in the area, such as geological, geographical, and meteorological, and this final one, which was initially denied, but apparently also to consolidate and extend the United States sovereignty over the largest practical area of the Antarctic continent. This final one was publicly denied for quite some time. This photo shows one of the ships.
My Justice League will burn this earth down for me.
This new veneer is bringing smiles back to millions for less than $30, so you can have the radiant smile you deserve without any gross molds or in-office visits. You can even eat with them on, just don't bite into any candy apples. Other than that, they can do everything a set of crowns can do at 1% of the cost. That's why Dr. Calvin invented this product in the first place. During lockdown, millions of patients skipped dentist visits, drank plenty of coffee and wine, and returned with stained and yellow-looking teeth. For those with insurance and $20,000 to spare, he could fix anyone's smile. But for the majority that didn't, there was no affordable alternative. So he teamed up with a local university and set out to create a solution. 1 year and hundreds of prototypes later, the product was completed.
Belonging to the United States Navy stuck between 2 of the Arctic's icebergs. In our number 6 spot today, we have a UFO report. This photo is of a previously classified document from 1963. Although the document still has a lot of information that has been blacked out, the document is the description and report of an unidentified flying object or UFO encounter. This is said to have taken place over the desert of Nevada, and the report was written in detail in order to have a written record of this event. The document is said to be the authentic report from the FBI, which is exactly why some of the details have been omitted. This might seem like less of a big deal now, as in this day and age we have declassified video footage of similar kinds of encounters, but for 1963, this was huge. As discussions of alien or extraterrestrial life is a big part of our modern society, this document shows that these things have been on our minds for many, many years now. In our number 5 spot today, we have a flying saucer. Speaking of aliens and UFOs, one place on Earth that has a multitude of alien stories coming from it is of course none other than Area 51. This site is no stranger to conspiracy theories, and this declassified photo taken at the location might give us a little insight into how these theories began. This photo clearly shows a strange disc-like object next to some more regular-looking planes, and I mean, to be fair, if we saw that disc flying through the air, it does resemble the flying saucer-type UFO that used to be talked about in the mainstream as the preferred alien mode of transportation. As it turns out, this photo is actually of an experimental aircraft that was made by the United States Air Force, of course, which is why the letters USAF can be seen on the craft. This was one of the few aircrafts created for the purpose of trying out various air carriers. Similar ones to this were also created by the government and were actually seen flying over the southwest region of the United States, which surely only contributed to the UFO discussions. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Soviet spacecraft. This photo shows the construction of the Soviet Buran spacecraft. Apparently, this was the spacecraft that was built in response to the news spilled by Richard Nixon in 1972 that the United States was to build its own brand new spacecraft, which was to be designed by NASA. The Buran was the first space plane to be produced as part of the Soviet-Russian Buran program, and in 1988 it actually went on to complete an unmanned spaceflight that was extremely successful. Unfortunately, this craft met its demise in 2002 when the storage hangar it was located in collapsed. The Buran program was suspended prior to this collapse because of a lack of funds and the political situation in the Soviet Union. The collapse was because of structural failure that was caused by poor maintenance, and unfortunately the spacecraft wasn't the only casualty. In far worse news, 8 workers also lost their lives that day. In our number 3 spot today, we have Area 51 Part 2. This is another photo that was taken from Area 51, and it shows another kind of spacecraft that is likely the source of many UFO stories. At this point, Area 51 will likely always be a place that is filled with rumors of our wildest imaginations, even if they were to one day start offering tours of the facility. Rumors span from aliens to mermaids and so much more, and it is believed that the US government is intentionally keeping it all a secret from us. Since the infamous Roswell incident that happened in 1947, the Nevada Air Force Base is going to be the source of many a mystery. While I don't know the exact details of what is going on in this photo, this is just another small insight into what goes on within the mysterious walls of Area 51. In our number 2 spot today, we have this nuclear waste facility. For another Nevada mystery, high up in the mountains of Yucca, there is a super top secret location that has details which are not to be released to the public. I guess that was probably implied when I said the word secret. The reason this facility is so secret is because it is said to hold all of America's nuclear waste. This waste repository was designated by the Nuclear Policy Act amendments of 1987, and basically it is a deep geological repository storage facility. While the project was approved in 2002 by the 107th United States Congress, as of April 14, 2011, federal funding for the site came to an end. This site was the focus of many fights, as there were tons of people who were extremely opposed to it. The closure of the site has left the United States government and American nuclear power plants without any designated long-term storage facility. This photo is said to have come from the site of the nuclear waste storage facility. In our number 1 spot today, we have The Experiment. This photo is an example of how, for a long time, the United States has done its best to stay on top of all of the latest kinds of technology and the most cutting-edge equipment. This photo is showing some kind of test that was being done on a prototype ejection seat. While this was once a classified photo, of course back when this was new technology, the Central Intelligence Agency has since released the photos in order to provide information on the technology that was being created during what now seems like the olden days of science. These times truly are not far off at all, and it's incredible to see how far we've come in so little time. This photo serves as a super cool reminder of just how technologically advanced we really are, although sometimes we may take that for granted. In our number 10 spot today, we have John Lennon. Of course, we all know John Lennon as one part of the Beatles who went on after they disbanded to have a very successful solo career. Lennon was not only a musician, but also a peace activist who was strongly anti-war. He was not afraid to display his activism and held a 2-week anti-war demonstration. There was a period of 3 years where the Nixon administration was trying to have him deported for his criticism against the Vietnam War. On December 8th, 1980, Lennon was leaving the Dakota apartment complex when he was stopped by a man named Mark David Chapman. Lennon signed an autograph for Mark, which is what is happening in this photo, and then Lennon went on his way. Little did he know, Mark was going to shoot him later that night. Once Lennon returned to the apartment complex, Mark was there waiting for him to commit his crime. Mark has said he did it mostly for the attention, which is so horrifying, but Mark is also a very religious man who explained that Lennon once saying that the Beatles were more famous than Jesus is what really pushed him to commit this crime. It is very crazy that this photo was captured when Lennon was being kind to who he thought was a fan, and no one could have predicted what would happen just a few hours later.
In our 9th spot, we have naked Prince Harry. Before Harry met Meghan, he was quite the wild royal and troublemaker. Back in 2012, naked photos of Harry partying up during his trip in Las Vegas got leaked online. Prince Harry was photographed playing a game of strip billiards with his friends in his VIP suite. In the photo, we see Harry holding his junk, while a naked girl stands behind him holding him. In another photo, we see the backside of Harry with his arms wrapped around the naked girl. I wonder what the Queen had to say when she saw these photos. Yikes. Coming in at number 8, we have Bill Clinton. It's no surprise that a number of high-up, powerful, wealthy individuals had ties with Jeffrey Epstein, including Bill Clinton. If you don't know the whole Jeffrey Epstein scandal, I suggest you look into it, but it's hella dark and disturbing. He forced a number of young individuals into doing things with him and his friends and anyone else with a lot of money. It's believed that Bill knew what Jeffrey was doing and was a part of some of it. Here is a photo of Bill with one of Jeffrey's victims, Shantae Davies. When the photo was taken, Davies was only 22 years old. She is seen rubbing Clinton's shoulders while they all wait for their plane to Africa in 2002. Apparently, it was Ghislaine Maxwell's idea for the young girl to help Bill out with his stiff back and give him a massage. Although Davies said that that's the most intimate that she got with Bill, it's still a very compromising photo of him. Having connections with Epstein in the first place tarnishes his reputation, one of the reasons why he has tried to bury this part of his past. Moving on at number 7, we have topless Mark Zuckerberg. Okay, well, seeing a guy topless is nothing scandalous, but a picture of Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, shirtless? Well, apparently Mark was really embarrassed when this photo got leaked, and his coworker that leaked it accidentally got in trouble. Let's take a look at this photo, shall we? Sorry, Mark. This photo was taken at some weird private party. The shirtless Mark is surrounded by a number of other shirtless dudes. Like I said, it's not even a bad photo, but Mark was not happy about it going around. Apparently, it was accidentally posted by Facebook's director of engineering, Andrew Bosworth. As soon as he realized it had been leaked, he took it down immediately, but the internet was too fast and screenshotted it. In our 6th spot, we have the Bohemian Grove. The Bohemian Grove is a secret and controversial club that meets in the California woods every year. The club consists of a number of rich men. Among the attendees are past and present presidents, government members, and business leaders. It's kept very hush-hush. What happens at this retreat thing stays there. Some say it's a cult, where they do human sacrifices among other illegal and spooky things. But since no one has yet infiltrated the club, we still don't really know what goes on there. But there are some photos that have gotten leaked, like pictures of a number of the men in weird cloaks surrounding a burning effigy, to pictures of some of the members seated around a huge dining table. Since this club is so controversial, I doubt the members want their pictures from the club leaked. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Mark Zuckerberg surfing. I'm pretty sure you all have seen this photo of Mark surfing in Hawaii. It became a viral photo and a meme. Why? Well, because Mark has way too much sunscreen on his face. He really packed that on all over his face, and it left a very noticeable white cast. I mean, good for him for taking sun safety seriously, and you know, skin cancer is no joke. But due to the fact that he became a laughingstock over the photo, I bet he didn't want anyone seeing those photos in the first place. Plus, it kind of ruins his reputation. Like, it's hard to take him seriously with that photo floating around, and all the jokes associated with it. Coming in at number number 4, we have Kate Middleton's topless pictures. Looks like Harry isn't the only one in the royal family to stir up some controversy. Back in 2012, Kate and William were in France vacationing when the paparazzi took some photos of the pair. In the photos, Kate was suntanning and she was topless. The paparazzi then sold the photos to the French magazine Clothes.
Real talk. Starting a business isn't for the faint of heart. That's why over 1 million entrepreneurs started theirs with Busy.
Who then published them. Obviously, she and the rest of the royal family were horrified and took legal action. In the end, the magazine company had to pay 100,000 euros in damages for publishing the photos. And 2 staff members were fined an additional 90,000 euros to pay to Kate Middleton and Prince William. Pretty sure every copy of this photo has been destroyed. And for Kate's sake and privacy, let's hope it stays that way. In our 3rd spot, we have Barack Obama's party. I didn't know Barack Obama was a big partier, but these photos prove otherwise. Just this year, Barack Obama threw a huge birthday bash for his 60th birthday. But it caused quite the uproar. Why? Well, photos from that night show a room packed full of maskless people in the middle of the pandemic. Especially since Barack is a huge political figure, you would think that he would set a good example, or at least practice what he's been preaching. Either way, Obama was under fire after photos of him dancing at this epic party were posted. In our 2nd spot, we have Prince Harry's inappropriate costume. Prince Harry was quite the royal troublemaker back in the day, making headlines with a number of scandals. Well, back in 2005, Harry was seen dressed up in a Nazi soldier uniform while attending a costume party. The costume consisted of wearing a red Nazi insignia on his left arm. Here are some of the photos from that night. Not only that, but he was photographed drinking and smoking in the outfit, which looks really freaking bad on the royal family. In the end, Prince Harry did apologize, saying, and I quote, "I am very sorry if I caused any offense or embarrassment to anyone. It was a poor choice of costume and I apologize." Let's just say that this is definitely one picture that Harry certainly wants to leave in the past. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Bill Gates. Bill Gates is another wealthy man who had ties with Jeffrey Epstein. Photographed here is a picture of the two at Jeffrey's Manhattan mansion in 2011. Over the years, Bill has denied his relationship with Jeffrey, but the two were friendlier than he likes to admit. Apparently, the first time they met was in 2011 after Epstein pleaded guilty to some of his crimes. But that didn't stop Bill from becoming close with him. He then proceeded to hang out with him on a number of different occasions. He went to Epstein's Manhattan town at least 3 times, one of those times being late at night. What were you doing there, Bill, so late, huh? He also flew on Epstein's plane a couple of times. In 2019, Gates said, and I quote, "I met him. I didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him." Which clearly wasn't the truth because they met repeatedly. But anyways, it seems like Bill doesn't want anyone to see any photos that he has with Jeffrey. He doesn't want to get roped into the legal and disturbing things that Epstein was into.
Kicking off our list at number 10. Late night dip. Alright, it wouldn't be a Taylor McWaters list if we didn't mention aliens more than once. This video was leaked last year in May. The footage is actually from 2019. It was recorded in San Diego. The Pentagon has since confirmed its authenticity. The UAP, the unidentified aerial phenomenon here, we don't say UFOs anymore, that's so old school. The UAP is spear-shaped and it's flying at extremely high speeds. No exhaust, no propulsion system, just a metal ball whipping by San Diego. The sphere then vanished into the water afterwards. So in case you're wondering, no, it didn't land, no aliens got out. They're like, hey, how fast was I going? No, none of that. We have no answers. No answers yet.
In our 9th spot, we have the aliens. It seems like NASA and Area 51 might be hiding aliens. What's new? The photo I'm about to share with you is a leaked photo of aliens hidden in Area 51. The photo was taken in the 1980s and years later someone leaked it online. I don't know about you, but that looks exactly like a space alien to me. And it looks like they're running some sort of tests on them or something. Now, of course, people think that this photo is fake. Go ahead, believe whatever. Just know that there are tons of individuals that believe it to be real. Plus, it's never been debunked. Take what you want for that. Coming in at number 8, we have the second sun. According to astronomer Paul Cox, there is a second sun in our solar system, and NASA is keeping it a secret. Why would they do that? I don't know, because they can. So Paul discovered this after using his telescope to stare at the planets. He actually live streamed him doing this, and while doing so, he pointed to a black dot, which was Mercury. He said that this was the location of the second sun. He said, and I quote, "You may be asking yourself, what is that large round thing to the right of the sun? Well, that's our second sun. I don't know if you knew that we had a second sun, but there it is. It is normally hidden from view. NASA and other organizations usually hide that stuff away from us." Now, I don't know why NASA would hide this from us, but apparently they are, and there's a second sun out there. In our 7th spot, we have the SpaceX explosion. Back in 2020, a NASA worker leaked video and photographic evidence of a SpaceX explosion. NASA was furious when they found out and sent out a memo to all workers saying that they would be fired if they publicly shared photos and videos from the Space Center again. And then someone leaked that memo. Anyways, NASA was all like, nah, nothing happened, nothing exploded. Then the video surfaced and they're like, oh snap, we're caught. It started when people saw smoke coming over the Space Coast and were like, what's going on over there? And NASA failed to properly explain. But like I said, things got leaked and they were exposed. In our 6th spot, we have Planet X. So astronomer Paul Cox says that NASA has proof of Planet X. It's a broken planet that is behind the sun that he believes will eventually crash into Earth and wipe out all of humanity. But obviously, NASA doesn't want anyone to know this, which is why they're hiding it from all of us. And I genuinely hope that this isn't true, and that Paul's lying, and that he knows nothing, because that's terrifying. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the trees on Mars. A weird shot taken of Mars revealed what looked like dark trees rising from the surface. Like, it straight up looks like trees and shrubs are growing there, which we know isn't possible. So then, what is it? Well, NASA says that it's just an optical illusion and it's not actually trees. But other people think that NASA is trying to already grow things on Mars, or that this is part of an alien structure. Who knows? But NASA's being hella sketchy with this photo. In our 4th spot, we have the lady on Mars. In 2007, people went nuts when the Spirit rover snapped this eerie photo on the planet. It literally looks like a human figure perched on a rock. Now, NASA immediately denied this and said that, it's just a rock. But that didn't stop UFO enthusiasts. They believe that this rock is actually a female figure made by aliens, or that it is an alien. Like, look at that. How can that be a rock? Like, there's fully arms and clothing on it. I'm sorry, I don't believe it. Nice try, NASA. Better luck next time. That's a woman. In our 3rd spot, we have the space guests. A couple of years ago, a Russian cosmonaut aboard the International Space Station noticed 3 unusual lights fly by their craft. Thankfully, they got it on film. The cosmonaut believes that what he saw and captured was indeed a UFO flying by. He said, and I quote, 5 objects appear flying alongside with the same distance. What do you think those are? Meteors, satellites, or ... The lights are in a straight line and apparently were hanging around that area for almost a minute before disappearing. He has no explanation for it besides it being a UFO spacecraft. In our 2nd spot, we have the alien statue. In 2019, NASA accidentally leaked some photos that we shouldn't have been able to see. So they released photos taken by their Mars robot Opportunity. In one of the shots, someone pointed out that there appears to be a dark object near one of Mars's craters. It looks like this object has a long arm, a bulky chest, and 2 leg fragments. One person said, and I quote, "It looks like an actual statue. There seems to be so many anomaly stones on Mars that at some point one must admit that sometimes a rock is an ancient artifact." Whereas others believe that this is an alien's corpse that is decomposing. But what do you think? It certainly looks like an alien to me. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the alien city. So there's a theory out there that aliens do actually live on the moon. However, they inhabit the dark side of the moon, aka the side of the moon facing away from us that we can't see. Well, a man named Scott Waring found physical evidence to prove this. He obtained satellite images from the dark side of the moon and saw that the moon has structures that cast shadows. Take a look for yourself. If you zoom into the photos, you can see a bunch of weird objects on the moon's surface. That's not the normal texture of the moon. those look like structures. So he believes that aliens are for sure on the moon and that NASA has been covering it up for years. Not only that, but the images that NASA chose to share with the public had been altered so that the objects were edited out. And then NASA added fake craters in that location. Why would they do that? Huh? That's suspicious. Yeah, that's hella sus. Starting off this countdown, we have these space monkeys. If you're an animal lover, then this one is gonna break your heart. Before sending humans into space, animals were launched into space to see how space travel would affect them. They typically chose primates for their close relation to humans. Obviously, looking back at that is hella messed up. A number of monkeys sadly passed away from these tests. I mean, the first monkey sent into space died from suffocation. There's photos of him being prepped and getting ready for space, and now looking at those photos, it's just hella disturbing. So now NASA has removed all the photos they have of their test subjects. They don't want people finding out their controversial past. Of course, you can still find these photos online today, but NASA still has tried to cover it up.
In our number 9 spot today, we have Cyclone Kenneth. In 2019, the intense tropical cyclone Kenneth ripped through Mozambique, making it the strongest tropical cyclone to hit the country since modern records began. The cyclone not only affected Mozambique, but also caused significant damage to the Comoro Islands and Tanzania as well. Cyclone Kenneth took the lives of at least 52 people, and it was estimated that it cost about $100 million in damages. To make matters worse, Kenneth was striking Mozambique just a month after a hurricane had devastated the northern part of the country. This photo was taken from the air looking down on a village that lies just north of Pemba, Mozambique, and you can clearly see the amount of damage and devastation the storm caused. As someone who is exceptionally lucky to have never experienced anything like this, I can't even imagine how terrifying and difficult it would be to go through. In our number 8 spot today, we have the lipstick killer. This is a photo that comes to us from December 10th, 1945. If looking at this image gives you a shudder down your spine, that absolutely makes sense, as it was written by a terrible person known as the lipstick killer. This photo was an image of a note he left written on the wall at one of his crime scenes. The photo comes from the apartment of Frances Brown, as just before he wrote this message, he took her life. After this message was left, he ended up taking the life of one other person before he was finally caught by police 6 months later. The message scrawled in the photo reads, quote, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." It is an absolutely chilling note with a horrifying backstory. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Peru flooding. In March of 2017, Peru suffered the worst flooding that had been seen in decades. Heavy bouts of rain that saw 10 times more rainfall than normal caused rivers to overflow, mudslides to destroy roads and farms, and mass amounts of flooding that took the lives of more than 70 people and displaced thousands. This photo was taken on March 17th, 2017, and it shows a group of people stranded in the floodwaters holding onto a rope trying to make their way through the water and to safety. This photo clearly shows the severity of the situation, and when this photo was taken, the end wasn't even near for the wet weather. This must have been an absolutely frightening time for those living in Peru, as well as for those who were tasked with the rescue efforts. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Europe flood. This photo comes to us from the summer of this year as people across Western Europe experienced disastrous flooding. After days of heavy rain, it ended up turning rivers that were usually normal and calm into raging currents that ravaged the streets and left cars and power lines being swept away, homes engulfed, and residents trapped. This photo was taken in Erfstadt, which is just southwest of Cologne, and it shows how a bunch of these houses collapsed due to subsidence, which is the sudden sinking of the ground's surface. Unfortunately, these floods caused many people to lose their lives, mostly in Germany, but there were sadly dozens of people in Belgium as well, all of which is an absolute tragedy. Rescue workers worked tirelessly to help as many people as possible escape this terrible situation. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Oroville Dam. On February 13th, 2017, in Oroville, California, the Oroville Dam, which is the tallest dam in the United States that holds back a reservoir that contains 1.1 trillion gallons of water, that dam's main and emergency spillways were damaged. This led to the emergency evacuation of 188,000 people over concerns that the dam's emergency spillway might fail. This was all caused by torrential rain and floods in the region, which then began to reveal the extensive damage in the emergency spillway. This photo shows the dam releasing 100,000 cubic feet of water per second into the main spillway. Luckily, a major disaster was avoided in this situation because of quick action by those responsible for the dam. In our number 4 spot today, we have the house of a monster. This photo was taken from the inside of serial killer Ed Gein's house, where he once used to live with his mother. If you're not familiar, Ed Gein was an absolute monster and is actually the basis for many horror movies today because of how horrifying his crimes were. Inside of his home, authorities not only found different household items that were made out of body parts, some from the victims of his crimes and some from the graveyards he would go and search and snatch from. The photos that were taken from inside of the home only scratched the surface of the horrors that were found inside. For a while, for some unknown reason, it was thought that they might use the house as a tourist attraction, but thankfully the house ended up burning down, and honestly I truly feel glad that it doesn't exist anymore. If it did, would you have gone there? In our number 3 spot today, we have Cyclone Saroha. Earlier this year, Indonesia was hit with devastating floods and landslides due to Cyclone Saroha. The damage was done on many remote eastern Indonesian islands, as well as in East Timor. The cyclone caused all of this damage and ripped through before making its way and making landfall in Australia, which is the first storm to do so since 1989. Flash floods took the lives of at least 30 people, but unfortunately this storm took many more lives as well. Relief efforts were made difficult by power outages, blocked roads that were covered in mud and debris, and considering how a lot of damage was done on remote islands, this made it really difficult because the islands were now surrounded by high waves, so access was extremely limited. This photo clearly shows the power of Mother Nature and the devastation storms like this can cause. The most terrifying part is that we are nearly powerless against these forces of nature. In our number 2 spot today, we have an acid drum. This photo comes to us from inside the house of another terrible person, the serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. This photo was taken from inside of his home after he was found out and caught by authorities. Before his arrest, he was sadly able to take the lives of 17 different people. Although this photo might look kind of plain, the horrors are plentiful. This shot shows a drum full of acid that was located inside of his home. I don't need to tell you what it was used for. I can't imagine the horrors investigators saw when they entered his home, and even previous to that as they investigated his crimes. Thankfully, Jeffrey was caught, and in 1992 he was sentenced to life in prison, but just 2 years later he was killed by a fellow prison inmate. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Dixie Fire. The Dixie Fire burned through a few different counties in California this summer. It is named after the creek that was near where the fire first started on July 13th, 2021. After it began, it went on to burn 963,309 acres before it was 100% contained. It became the largest non-complex wildfire in the history of the state of California. The fire destroyed people's homes and belongings and completely burned entire towns, and by July 23rd, it had already become the largest wildfire of the 2021 California fire season and was the cause for the unhealthy air quality that could be seen across the western United States, including states that are as far east as Utah and Colorado. This photo was taken on August 17th, and it shows the fire lighting up a hillside in Lassen County. The fire didn't end up being 100% contained until very recently on just October 25th. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Tsar Bomb. This is a photo that was taken on October 30th, 1961. It was quite the Halloween spooky fright that year, as this is said to be the largest and most powerful nuclear weapon ever created and tested. The hydrogen aerial bomb was developed in the Soviet Union by a group of nuclear physicists that were under the leadership of Igor Kurchatov. The bomb was dropped by parachute and was detonated autonomously. While this test was meant to be a secret, it turned out to be less than well kept, as it was obviously a huge explosion that was detected by United States intelligence agencies. A secret US recon aircraft called Speedlight Alpha was there monitoring the explosion, and it got so close that it had its anti-radiation paint absolutely scorched off. The photo clearly shows the bomb as it exploded, and it is said that this bomb was 5,000 times stronger than the ones that were dropped on Japan during World War II. That's not to say that those ones weren't strong, because they were absolutely devastating. It's just an example to show how large this one really was.
Number 9, Talos.
Basically, I'm here to announce that we're building Iron Man.
Tactical Assault Light Operator Suit, aka Talos. It was once a project announced back in 2014, and like the former president said, this was supposed to be a modern-day Iron Man suit of armor. Didn't end up being like that at all. It was supposed to change warfare entirely, but 5 years later, the project was scrapped. Or was it? It probably wasn't. Of course not. We're still working on Apple Watches. You're telling me they're gonna scrap this? Good joke. On one hand, obviously it's hard to do. We could barely launch Google Maps in one go, let alone a suit of armor. I imagine it's complicated. Sure. But with recent leaks, we can now take a peek at what could have been. See, ideally, the suit would have given the user advanced tactical awareness alongside advanced military-grade armor, which has an exoskeleton underneath that's wired to the helmet and the rest of the suit. You're pretty much Iron Man. They figured out a few things while creating the suit, but overall, this Iron Man armor wasn't close to being like what we're seeing on the big screen. We're getting pretty close. We're getting alarmingly close, I'd say. Number 8, the Cola Well. If you dug a hole through the center of the earth and jumped in, would you come out the other side? Of course not. This isn't.
Another body's been found in the woods.
Are you sure it's not you killing people, Winter?
No one is above the law. I've drawn up a new set of clues.
A cartoon. But the Arctic Circle back in the 70s sure did look like a cartoon. The deepest hole on the planet. Yeah, let's gather resources and focus on this for a bit. Sure, during the Cold War. We love it. Scientists began working on the project in 1970. For many years, Russian scientists in winter coats were drilling a hole, just down as deep as they could get. What a great job that would be, eh? They got 1/3 through the Baltic continental crust and they found rocks older than 2 billion years. It was quite the project. It was exciting. But eventually they hit this muddy lava, and then in 1992, they stopped drilling. A huge concern here was that demons would be released from the earth. That's fair. That's more than fair. That's an okay concern. We don't want those around, I get it. The previous title for the deepest hole belonged to the United States Bertha Rogers Hole, which reached 31,000 feet. The borehole still remains the deepest artificial point on Earth. Now, it was odd for the United States to focus on beating the Russians to the deepest point on Earth. We talk about the space race often, but we forget about this one. The deep hole race. Stanley Yelnats would be so disappointed in us. We gotta talk about this more. Number 7, radar footage. Now normally when we see leaked footage, be it of UAPs or leaked documents, it's always the worst quality, right? It's always taken with like a BlackBerry curve. It's hard to believe when military footage is horrible quality. Like, we're trying, help us help you. Like, how can we see photos of black holes and not have a photo of a UAP yet, right? Or do we? Well, Jeremy Corbell is here to help. He took to Twitter in May 2021 sharing footage of US Navy ships being swarmed by UAPs. This time we have radar footage from inside the ship. It came from the Combat Information Center in the USS Omaha. This 46-second clip was originally recorded on July 15th, 2019, and you could even hear a dude in the background yell about how fast the objects in the radar are moving. That's how you know it's authentic. It's a guy like, whoa, that's crazy. On that ship too, imagine what he's seen and he's surprised. I'm shook. Number 6, the Amityville photo. A little ghost stuff for us, why not? This photo was taken inside the Amityville house back in 1976. You see, it's the boy with the eyes. Nice, you got it. Nice, good eye. At first, I thought this was from a horror movie. It looks fake almost, or set up, until you start to read the details. See, this photo was taken with automatic cameras equipped with infrared. So this ghost here probably wasn't expecting a selfie, right? Photographer Gene Campbell took this photo in 1976. Gene was working with paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren on this case. Yeah, this was long before the movies. They were just really working on this case in real life. This is history. This is so scary. The photo was revealed 3 years after it was taken on the Merv Griffin show, and many believe this is the ghost of John DeFeo, one of the boys who lived there in 1974. Now, you can't really do this anymore, right? You can't just whip out photos from an otherwise, crime scene and be like, okay gang, is this a ghost? Let's take a look. No, there was obvious backlash for obvious reasons. It took 3 years for that photo to reach the public eye, and now all of a sudden everybody is talking about ghosts. Did this help? Probably not. Again, this was long before The Conjuring was ever released in theaters or anything like that. This would have been so random to see on TV. How frightening. Also, who believes in ghosts here? What's the ratio? Comment down below. I'm genuinely curious. I'm like 50-50 in the ghost game. Number 5, quantum computer. This next one is pretty scary. Not a fan of this one. Computers are getting more and more advanced by the day. Andrew Garfield told everybody that that Spider-Man leak was fake, and we're all like, okay, we'll believe it. Yeah, we believed it. That's how good technology is. It's getting dangerous. Poor Andrew Garfield, but also poor us. We're for sure doomed any day now. But thanks to our man Snowden, Edward Snowden, it was reported in the Washington Post back in January 2nd, 2014, that the NSA is secretly working hard at creating their own computer. It's called the quantum computer, and it cost around $80 million to build. It's a little more expensive than the new iPad. Just a touch. This computer is safely stored in a massive room-sized metal box, not intimidating at all, and it's part of a program called Penetrating Hard Targets. So it can break encryptions for just about anyone, anything, finance records, medical records, your old MSN, hopefully not, but maybe. What a nightmare that would be. The NSA is well on their way to breaking every form of public encryption, so we're doomed. This quantum computer can theoretically break through any RSA encryption as well, which for the average computer today, that takes years. The supercomputer can break through a lot faster. So yeah, you better clear that history now while you still can, or else everyone's gonna see. Number 4, more government leaks. Even allies of the United States weren't safe during Edward's leak. Thanks to Snowden, at the end of October 2013, it was leaked that the United States was spying on Germany, France, and Spain, all at the same time. Horrible. The NSA tapped into 35 phones spying on 35 different world leaders, one of which was German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who called out the NSA publicly immediately after finding out and said this act of snooping was just unacceptable between friends. That hits deep, eh? I thought we were friends? We're pulling that card out? Ooh, world leader or not, nobody was safe during these phone calls. It was also reported that the NSA was monitoring calls in Spain for the average folk. Yeah, they monitored around 60 million calls in 1 month. Imagine how boring that job would be. Just some dude listening like. Number 3, North Sentinel Island. Heading over to India, this island is home of the Sentinelese tribe, one of the most forbidden islands on the planet. We don't talk about this island nearly enough. It's fascinating, and it's also equally terrifying. It's located in the Bay of Bengal. North Sentinel Island is about 1,200 kilometers away from India, and while most islands are shrinking or just disappearing, this one actually grew back in 2004. Yeah, the island lifted up a couple of meters during an earthquake, so the west and south sides gained an extra kilometer. Yeah, more room for more inhabitants. Let's talk about them. The inhabitants on this floating cursed island are among the few uncontacted tribes left in the world. They've apparently been there for 50,000 years, and there's no signs of agriculture or even fire, yet somehow this tribe has thrived for this long. And if we try and get close and, talk to them or see what's up, they try and drive everybody away, violently. In fact, back in 2006, 2 fishermen lost their lives because they got too close to the island without knowing who was on it. The Indian government also didn't roll up to the beach after and start interrogating locals. Instead, they made the island now officially forbidden to enter, so stay away. Number 2, the mouse with an ear on its back. What a transition. Awesome. We love segues. Back in 1997, Stuart Little here became the test subject to determine if scientists could grow cartilage using chondrocytes, aka cells from a cow. And it worked. And now we're still talking about it today, obviously. It all started when Joseph Vincanti, pediatric surgeon, began designing human organs. This was during a shortage. He wasn't just, bored and started to make ears. He was changing the medical game. And little did he know, he was actually about to change the science game as well. He constructed an ear and then told his brother Chuck and his partner Bob to not bring up the fact that he attached said ear to a live mouse. He's like, please don't mention the mouse, please. How can you not? Here, check out this new ear I made. Hey, 1 sec, let me catch it. What? It's disgusting. What's going on here? What's this science lab you have? So Chuck spilled the beans. He didn't keep said information to himself. Can you blame him? No. But good thing he leaked the information because now we know cow cartilage can create cells. All because he spilled the beans. Nice. Thanks, Joseph. And also thanks to that mouse that totally didn't volunteer for this life. Can I Q-tip his back? I want to Q-tip his back. Let's clean that little ear for him, I bet that would feel great. It's like a back scratch, but an ear Q-tip at the same time. Imagine those mixed. Stuart Little, he's got it. And finally, number 1, motorized roller skates. This last one, they've been working on for quite a long time. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen working on this channel, so yeah, I had to end off this list with this. Motorized roller skates, what a dream. Is it happening? Are we close? I sure hope not. This photo was taken at the Sunoco station in Hartford, Connecticut. Context aside, this is an odd one. It's a guy with a briefcase filling up at a gas station, and he's wearing roller skates. Is this 2077? No, it's actually 1956. And that futuristic looking man right there, that's Mike Dreschler. He was working for a Detroit skate company, and he was very dangerously close to gas-powered roller skates. Sounds like something from a cartoon where he's like, oh, I'll get you, pew, and then he blasts off. This would never, don't try this. This is a horrible idea. They would have cost around $250, which today is around $2,400, and its max speed was 17 miles an hour, so you'd still be late and you'd still be buying gas. It was a lose-lose. Imagine this in the closing act of a Mission Impossible movie. How boring would that be? Now obviously the public wasn't supposed to see this. They feared that it would encourage folks to get creative on their own. So yeah, I'll reinforce that. Don't make rocket skates with gasoline. Thanks. Hit that thumbs up and don't make rocket skates. We love it. Don't eat Tide Pods or make your own jet boots. Taylor McWaters, there's a quote for you. There we go.
Starting off this countdown, we have Jeffrey Bezos. In 2019, the founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, admitted that his nudes almost got leaked. Basically, someone got a hold of some steamy text messages and nudes that he sent to his girlfriend, and they tried to blackmail him with it. But before they could do so, he came out and admitted what he had done, and he described it in detail. One of his texts said, and I quote, "I love you alive, girl. I will show you with my body and my lips and my eyes very soon." Now, any person, celebrity, billionaire, or
I try to be really intentional about saving Sundays for ritual. I am obsessed with the Laundress and their new wool and cashmere shampoo and delicate wash.
not, probably doesn't want their nudes getting leaked. On top of that, Jeff was married at the time that this information came out, so it looked pretty bad on him. But he claims that he was separated from his wife before dating his new lady. Either way, Bezos didn't want us to see that side of him, and frankly, I don't want to either.
In our number 9 spot today, we have the Stanford Prison Experiment. This photo comes from 1971 during the Stanford Prison Experiment. For those of you who aren't familiar with this experiment, it started on August 14th, 1971, and was led by university psychology professor Philip Zimbardo. The experiment took student volunteers and divided them into 2 groups. One group of prisoners and one group of guards, and they placed all of the volunteers into a fake prison that was created for the experiment. The experiment aimed to see if and how quickly humans would turn evil under the right conditions with the right amount of power. Basically, it was just to try and answer the question of if humans are inherently good or inherently evil. I think everyone was shocked with the results. After only 6 days, the experiment needed to be concluded because the guards began absolutely tormenting the prisoners. It really showed the kinds of things humans can be capable of even after such a short time. This photo is definitely reminiscent of that experiment and serves as our reminder. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Pioneer's Defense. This photo is known as the Pioneer's Defense, and man, does it ever look creepy. This photo comes from 1937 and was taken by a Russian photographer named Viktor Bula. This photo takes place in the Leningrad area, which is now known as St. Petersburg, which is the second largest city in Russia. The people in this photo were a part of a group that was the 1930s Russian equivalent of our Boy Scouts, which was called the Young Pioneers. The masks on their faces leave a very eerie feeling, and for a fair reason. These people were doing a military preparation drill, which is the reason for the gas masks. This photo was taken during a time when the country was under the dictatorship of Joseph Stalin, and the residents were constantly unsure of what was going to happen. The country was already seeing death, and people were already frightened just a few years before the start of World War II. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Stanley Hotel. This is a photo of the Stanley Hotel, which is the hotel that inspired the famous Stephen King novel, The Shining. This hotel was under construction in the early 1900s and saw a fateful day in 1911. There was an unexplained explosion that happened in room 217. In the explosion, a chambermaid was seriously injured, but she ended up surviving and actually returning to work. A few years later, she passed away, and ever since her passing, there have been tons of guests who swear they saw her ghost. Guests have said that they have seen her around the halls of the hotel, but the place that gets the most paranormal activity is of course room 217. This is the room where Stephen and his wife stayed for one terrifying night in 1974. Apparently they were actually the only guests in the hotel for this night, which at any other hotel might be cool, but I feel like this is not what you want from a haunted hotel. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Rothschild Surrealist Ball. The Rothschild family is one of the wealthiest and most powerful families there has ever been. For years and years, there have been many rumors swirling about just how powerful and influential they really are, and there are some pretty crazy theories out there. In 1972, the family held a surrealist ball, which is where this photo is from. These photos could be potentially very innocent, but there is just something about these elaborate masks, coupled with the theories about what this family is really up to, that just make it feel very eerie. This party is one of the most legendary there has ever been, and whether or not they really are involved in shady dealings, that still is impressive. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Salem UFO. On the morning of July 16th, 1952, this photo was captured by Shell Alpert and has stumped people ever since. This photo shows 4 unidentified objects hovering in the air above Salem, Massachusetts, and was taken at the Salem Coast Guard Air Station. The objects seem to be above the Winter Island and Cat Cove areas, but there really isn't much more that is known about this strange incident. There were a few theories regarding this photo. One is a camera glitch, others think it may have just been light reflecting off of the window that the photo was taken through. But of course, there are people who point to similar incidents that happened in the 1950s, and of course believe it is proof of extraterrestrial beings. It is very likely we may never know exactly, but the air of mystery it leaves is definitely kind of cool. In our number 4 spot today, we have the eruption of Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens is a stratovolcano located in Skamania County, Washington. The volcano is best known for its huge and disastrous eruption on May 18th, 1980. This photograph comes from photographer Robert Landsberg, who was of course in the area at the time of this eruption. Before the eruption, he had visited the area in order to photograph and document all of the changes that were happening. On May 18th, he was within a few miles of the volcano when it erupted. Since he unfortunately was located so close to the explosion, he knew that he would be unable to escape this disaster, so instead of focusing on the impossible, he focused on taking as many pictures as possible. Robert was obviously incredibly brave and dedicated, but also very smart. After snapping as many photos as he could, including this one, he then secured his camera in his backpack and covered his backpack with his body. He knew he was unlikely to survive, but wanted to make sure that these photos did. His body was found 17 days later with his backpack still underneath him. His film was of course developed and has provided geologists with some really valuable insights with his close documentation of the eruption. In our number 3 spot today, we have this burst of joy. You might be looking at this photo wondering how this extremely joyous photo could hold any dark secrets. Well, this photo won a Pulitzer Prize, and for a good reason. This photo was captured by Slava Vetter on March 17, 1973 at the Travis Air Force Base in California. The photo shows United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Robert L. Sturm and his family. This was taken as he was being reunited with his family after 5 years of being held as a prisoner of war in North Vietnam. On October 27, 1967, he was leading a flight of F-105 when he was shot down over Hanoi and held captive until March 14, 1973. I can't imagine what this must have been like for his family, because there was a chance that he could have not come home at all. The girl with her arms wide is his 15-year-old daughter, but the look on all of their faces truly captures the pure joy that they are all feeling. In our number 2 spot today, we have the frozen man of Mount Everest. This photo comes from 1996, and it shows Beck Weathers getting treated after the Mount Everest disaster. The Mount Everest disaster took place on May 10th and 11th in 1996, where there was a blizzard on the mountain that ended up stranding and taking the lives of 8 people who were aiming to descend the mountain. Beck was a part of the team who was climbing the mountain on this fateful day, and he ended up suffering from snow blindness during the climb. He actually fell into a hypothermic coma because it was so cold, and he suffered severe frostbite on his face, hands, and feet. Pretty miraculously, he not only survived, but ended up walking back down to camp in order to get help, where he was then taken by helicopter to receive treatment. He ended up needing his hands, part of his feet, and even his nose amputated, but he survived this whole ordeal, and that is the most important thing. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Dyatlov Pass incident. If you have never heard of the Dyatlov Pass incident, you better buckle in because it is so terrifying. This photo was taken in February of 1959 as 9 young Soviet hikers set out to trek through the Ural Mountains. They had set up camp, and sometime during the night, something happened that made them cut their way out of the tent and all flee the site. Leaving in such a rush, they were of course underdressed for the bitterly cold weather, and 6 of them ended up passing away from hypothermia, which is extremely tragic. The other 3, however, is where this story takes a frightening turn. Like I mentioned before, no one knows why they fled the tent in the first place, and the last 3 hikers were found passed away with severe signs of physical trauma that no one could agree on what had caused it. In 2019, the investigation was reopened, and just last year there was a conclusion that a kind of avalanche called a slab avalanche was the cause of these injuries. Regardless of what happened, this whole incident was of course very tragic, but the mystery behind it definitely takes it to a spooky place.
In our number 10 spot, we have the Queen's last photos. Look, these last photos of the Queen are not dark at all. Yes, I know the title of this video says dark, but I can't do it. I can't say that it is. The Queen literally looks so sweet in this photo, and there's nothing but light surrounding her. She reminds me so much of my granny. I hope they're having tea together in heaven. The Queen almost looks like an angel already here in these photos. In almost every one of these last shots shared, the Queen is smiling so big, as if she's just happy and not suffering or anything. Of course, the public doesn't know the details of her final days and what she might have gone through, but these photos would suggest that she was content in her favorite place, Balmoral, and just living up her final days on the planet. You could spin it and say that anyone's final days are dark, but nah, these are just bright and beautiful, and I refuse to associate them with the characterization of dark.
Number 9. The first photo of a black hole. Okay, at first glance, you may think this is a blurry photo of a distant star, and compared to some shots we have today of nebulas, this black hole doesn't seem impressive at first. But back in 2019, around 200 scientists from 20 different countries all put their big brains together in order to get a photo of a black hole at the center of the Messier 87 galaxy, 55 million light years away. But just how do you do this? How do they get a photo of something that sucks in light and all of matter? Well, the Event Horizon telescope shows us the dark center here, this hole that swallows all matter. It looks like a ring that you can maybe look around, but the light that we see in this photo, these radio waves that are represented, that's coming from all around the black hole, behind it, in front of it, to the side. It's actually impossible to see, but after the team made a virtual telescope the size of Earth, yeah, you heard me, they were able to see the radiation surrounding the black hole, therefore get this image. Black holes are something we barely understand in the science world alone, and the fact that we can see a blurry photo is more than we deserve, really. Number 8, the sun. While it's not recommended that we stare at it, the sun is pretty beautiful. As of today, we have one of the most crystal clear photos of the big red fireball. Photographer Andrew McCarthy layered together 150,000 different photos of the sun to create this 300 megapixel image for us to awe at. Now we can look at this and our eyes don't melt out of our heads. Now of course there's many steps that come into the picture, pun intended, in order to not go blind or light any fires. Andrew required a special telescope with numerous filters to do so. So if you're thinking of pointing your phone at a telescope and then pointing that at the sun, just don't do it. It's not gonna work. Number 7, time travelers. Ah yes, we love these on Most Amazing. It's a common theme in movies, Back to the Future, Looper, Avengers. Time travel plots are fun, but of course, they're mainly nonsense. So when we see a case like the Cape Scott story, we can't help but be intrigued. Time travel or not, this is an interesting photo. It comes from Ray Peterson's book, The Great Cape Scott Story. That book was from 1974, but the actual photo in there was taken over 100 years ago. And in the photo, we see this modern looking guy rocking shorts, messy surfer morning hair. He doesn't look like he's from this time period at all. And this has happened more than once, like the time traveling hipster. That was also a fun time. That was a photograph from the 40s, again, seen seems to feature a modern man. Now that one was debunked since, but this first guy with the shorts and the hair, like I'm pretty sure that's my cousin. This guy looks familiar. What the hell? That's not an early 1900s man at all. No chance. Time travel confirmed. Let us know in the comments. Number 6, worldwide selfie. The selfie Ellen took at the Oscars, I'll admit, that's up there. That's pretty good. Of course, right next to astronaut Michael Collins' photo of everybody in the world. Yeah, your parents were in this photo. How fun is that? They didn't even know it. In this photo, we have everybody alive at the time photobombing the main center of attention. We have Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong returning after their successful Apollo 11 mission back in 1969. When thinking of the astronauts who first went to the moon, we often forget about Michael Collins, but this photo he took is still so underrated. I can't even get 4 of my friends together for a single photo, and Michael got everybody in the world in one shot. Number 5, the first aerial photo. With technology today, we can map out our long commute easily. Google Street View it's honestly witchcraft. The fact that I can float around virtually or see the top of any building with a click of a button like on Google Earth, that's a privilege. Even if it's slow or glitchy, it's amazing. Also, drones, that bowling alley drone video, don't even get me started, that's crazy. The first aerial photograph, that was back in 1860. James Wallace Black took this one, not by using drones, but rather by using a hot air balloon. This lovely landscape is the town of Boston, and you're looking at it from around 2,000 feet. Another milestone in aerial photography, of course, is the first photo from space. This was much later in 1946. So next time you use a selfie stick in public, don't take it for granted, and also don't use a selfie stick in public. Number 4, the isolator. This image might seem haunting at first, definitely, but it's actually pretty ahead of its time. The isolator came long before noise cancelling mode or lo-fi beats to study and relax to. This goofy looking helmet was intended to block out noise and finally concentrate on finishing that paper due at midnight. This was back in the early to mid 1900s when inventor Hugo Gernsback worked hours and hours to create this study buddy to block out the distractions in life. This is a powerful image because the things that distract us today, like Instagram, Messenger, dating apps, phones, anything really, none of those were even a concept back in 1925 when this device was needed, when it was revealed to the public. Focusing is hard. If you're working in a loud office and you're thinking it's a you problem, it's not. This guy had like 3 pencils and a wooden desk, and even so, he's like, oh, come on, man, focus. Block these pieces of wood out. Like, he had nothing and he was still distracted. That's crazy. This device was useful, but of course it wasn't practical. Some light reading in the park. Yes, let me just pull out the isolator. Number 3, portable holding cell. Prisoner transport is always a risky game. When out in public, in any way, the odds that something goes wrong or they escape back into the real world go up significantly. And we don't want that depending who or what is in the back of that truck. The movie Con Air is about this exact situation unfolding. A timeless classic, if you ask me. Nicolas Cage, so good. And Dave Chappelle, yeah, good one. Well, back in the 1920s, we didn't have SWAT teams move around the worst of the worst. We had bike cops with cages. This portable jail cell is an early version of our police car, except doesn't work. The concept was perfect, but the fact that this guy in the cell can just reach out and grab the officer driving the motorcycle at any time, that's not ideal. The fact that he's less than a foot away, that's not relaxing in the slightest bit. A motorcycle sidecar, those are fun. Those are a great time. If I had one of those, I wouldn't be here right now, nor would Chris. We'd be whipping around the town. You know who I wouldn't take around town? This guy. He's up to something. He looks suspicious. You can see on his face. He wants to grab him off the bike. Number 2, ice mask. Today you can go to Amazon and get a therapeutic gel face mask for like $20. If you're stressed or if you're trying to avoid puffy eyes, throw this in the freezer for a hot minute and then you're set. You can make your own aloe vera honey gel mask if you feel like. Just click any vlogger that says the word wellness in their bio, and then you're set. Back in the 40s, Hollywood makeup artist Max Factor Jr. created the first face mask to reduce facial puffiness, and it looked way cooler. Again, pun intended. They didn't use freezer gels, instead just a bunch of ice cube shaped containers that froze individually and then they were stuck onto your face. It was an ice cube tray mask. Rather. It was actually invented to fight hangovers. That's one of the main reasons. How fun. It's a shame that this design never caught on because the ones today, they're no good. They don't work. They're not cold enough. Imagine busting this thing out during a lecture. Imagine having this underneath the isolator. God, you could do anything you wanted. Number 1. First photo of Machu Picchu. It's currently a wonder of the modern world and it's kind of a big deal. Let's talk about it. Machu Picchu was built around 1450 AD. It was first discovered in 1911 by archaeologist Hiram Bingham when he and a small team were originally heading out to find the ancient city of Vilcabamba. But during their commute from Cuzco, they found this landmark instead. And I bet they're pretty jazzed about it. Yeah, sitting at 2,430 meters above sea level, Machu Picchu is a 14th century Inca citadel built from thousands and thousands of stones with many weighing over 50 tons. was. And with Machu Picchu translating to Old Mountain, well, this seemed like an impossible build back then, hence the fact that it's a modern wonder of our world. We barely had animal power back then too. All we had were llamas, so I mean, we really don't know how we did this. They designed a perfect city with their bare hands. They slapped these giant rocks into each other without any problems at all. I mean, after 500 years of foul weather, nothing has yet to destroy this ancient city. I wonder if when Hiram Bingham took this photo, they knew over 100 years later that we would still be blown away by it. We know nothing about this still. This photo, it's all we have.
Coming in at number 10, we have a ghost in Cepheus. This looks like a ghost in the ether for sure. It's actually a rather mysterious dusty curtain featuring a very faint reflection of nebula VDB 152. The reddish tinge you see is ultraviolet light from a star causing a rusty looking luminescence in the nebula dust. Described as a cosmic phantom, this picture was released by NASA on Halloween in 2012 and titled A Ghost in Cepheus. This intergalactic ghost is 1,400 light years away, so arguably a safe enough distance for us to deal with. Who knows how fast this ethereal dust can travel though? Also, who knows what this dust is like up close? I don't trust it. Dust it.
In our number 9 spot, we have Princess Diana's last shots. Here we have a bunch of shots of Princess Diana in her final hours, getting into her car with her bodyguard and the man that she was seeing, Dodi Fayed. She was in Paris at the time when her car crashed, killing all of the passengers in the car. There is one final shot of Princess Diana with Dodi in an elevator, and Diana is looking directly at the elevator camera and smiling. The shot is quite eerie as you look at her beautiful smile and spirit having fun until the end. What makes them even more eerie is if there's a slight part of you that buys into the theory that the crash was an insider job. That always makes me so uncomfortable to think about, and it quite possibly makes looking at these images more chilling. In our number 8 spot, we have the Queen and Prince Philip. This is one of the last photos taken of Prince Philip at age 99 with Queen Elizabeth II. It's actually so sweet and sad at the same time as they look at a homemade wedding anniversary card from their grandchildren. The picture was taken to mark their 73rd wedding anniversary right before the prince passed away. Did y'all know that Prince Philip was already a Prince of Greece before he was married to Queen Elizabeth II and became Prince Consort and Duke of Edinburgh? Because I didn't. But honestly, I should have guessed. I feel like the royal family previously used to keep the bloodlines quite close and within the realm of the blue bloods, you know? Ever heard of the blue bloods theory, anyone? People believe that you're either programmed in your blood to be wealthy or poor. It's a really interesting thought and rabbit hole to go down, that's for sure. In our number 7 spot, we have the Queen and her grandson.
My Justice League will burn this earth down for me.
One of the last photos of Queen Elizabeth II with Prince Louis, her grandson, is such a treat to look at. This photo was taken at the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in June 2022, and honestly, earlier that day, you do see the Queen looking possibly a little distressed. She's frowning a lot and truly just looking a little uncomfortable, but in this moment captured of the Queen and Prince Louis, she literally looks particularly blissful. Prince Louis is holding his ears in the most comical way, appearing a little distressed from the noise, I'm sure, of, you know, thousands of Brits below him that had come to honor the Queen in her celebrations. We have seen some other smaller royals do something similar when on the balcony in the past, but no one can deny that Prince Louis certainly is full of life and personality, and so it's really just a funny shot to see. Albeit sad though that perhaps the prince's last photo wasn't a smiling one, but I bet his adult self will appreciate the lightness of it. In our number 6 spot, we have the Jubilee family photo. The last photo of the family together on the balcony without Harry and Meghan was during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebration on the final day of June the 5th, 2022. Queen Elizabeth II can be seen with now King Charles III, now Queen Consort Camilla, Prince William, Duchess Kate, and their 3 kids, Prince Louis, Prince George, and Princess Charlotte. The royal family looks very happy to be celebrating the Queen's long reign. The Queen herself looks amazing in her vibrant green suit. However, in video footage from the time the family was on the balcony, the Queen does seemingly have moments of looking a little sad, and gosh, I wonder what's going through her mind. It's also really sad that this celebratory day is one of their last big celebrations and moments photographed together. In our number 5 spot, we have Prince Harry at the Queen's funeral. These are a few of the last photos taken of Prince Harry at the Queen's funeral. Of course, these photos are terribly sad to see and dark, as he is not only attending the Queen's funeral, but his grandmother's funeral. In some of the photos, you see the prince crying and hiding his face, and then you also see him walking during the service holding his wife Meghan Markle's hand. The prince stepped down from the royal family and gave up his name, and so during the funeral, we saw him be quite separated from his royal family. It was rumored that the prince and Meghan were snubbed for the funeral procession as they were seated in the second row behind the royal family, but whether that is protocol or snubbery, that has not been confirmed. Assuming it was protocol, that must have been so hard on him to not be able to fully be present with his family during this time, but hopefully he was included in ways we did not see. After Meghan Markle's expose with Oprah and the interviews that Harry has also done commenting on his family, I'm not so sure of that, but hopefully the death of the Queen will bring the family closer together again. In our number 4 spot, we have Prince William and Prince Harry together. One of the few photos captured at the funeral for Queen Elizabeth II is of Prince William and Prince Harry together, and these photos have had the world going crazy as to whether they are friendly or not. Some say that the two princes are not on good terms, while others say that they have made amends due to the passing of the Queen. What we are certain of is that they didn't seem to converse much during the service, and they definitely felt a tad frosty to each other. Although it was obviously a sad day, and perhaps the coldness of the photos really had more to do with their sadness for their grandmother and them both retreating within themselves mentally, as people often do at funerals, rather than them just being in a massive fight that has forever split them apart. The brothers were seemingly so close growing up, and so I think I speak for everyone when I say that I hope whatever is going on with them gets mended, because life is too short. In our number 3 spot, we have Peter Phillips. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. Who? Peter Phillips is not a part of the immediate royal family, but he is the son of Princess Anne, the Queen's daughter, and so he is another one of her grandsons. And while a rather dark photo was captured of him at the Queen's funeral that I just have to share with you all, he was caught possibly exposing his own thoughts in a photo from September 19th, the Queen's funeral, as he's walking behind Prince Harry and, yes, Meghan Markle. In the photo, he is glaring at Meghan Markle. Was he captured in a moment of internal judgment? Whatever is going on, it is clear that he feels some kind of negative feelings toward Meghan, and I mean, most of the royal family seemingly does, as Meghan has been exposing the behind-the-scenes goings-on within the royal family. They have always been quite private, and the world saw them as a mystery, besides, well, some of the scandals that have happened over the years, but for the most part, they have remained quite private, so perhaps Peter feels uncomfortable with Meghan around, but in any case, this was a dark moment captured from that day. In our number 2 spot, we have Queen Elizabeth II waving to her father. Okay, I went back in the archives for this one. This photo honestly is super sad to see and quite dark, so I needed to add it to the list. In 1952, the Queen left for a trip to Kenya, and it was on this trip that she became Queen and learned of the death of her father, King George VI. In this photo we see right here, the Queen is looking at her father and waving to him for the last time. Whoa. Can you imagine if the last moment you had with your father was caught on camera? I'm sure this has been the case for a lot of people, but man, would that crumble me inside if that were to happen. It would be so sad, but also a gift as well. And when you think about it, the Queen looks quite happy in this photo, and so it's kinda a nice thought to think that perhaps one of the last moments that the King had with his daughter, she was smiling. Dark, but beautiful at the same time. Finally, in our number 1 spot, we have Prince Andrew at the funeral. Arguably one of the darkest last photos of one of the darkest royal family members, Prince Andrew is seen walking with his siblings and the new king from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey. He looks as one would expect one to look when their parent passes away, but it's hard to not look at him and see an aura of possibly someone who was involved with the horrendous crimes that were led by Jeffrey Epstein. After the public found out about Prince Andrew's relationship with Jeffrey and a lot of the suspicious activity that didn't get cleared up after Prince Andrew did an interview on the accusations, the prince resigned from his public roles, and the Queen herself removed his honorary military affiliations and royal charitable patronages in January 2022. Prince Andrew lobbied very hard to stop Charles from becoming king. Apparently, Prince Andrew doesn't get on with King Charles III very well, so that's very interesting. Anyways, it's hard not to see a picture of him and immediately think dark.
Kicking off the list at number 10, motorized roller skates. Okay, this first one they've been working on for a very long time. Motorized roller skates. What a dream this would be. This photo was taken at the Sunoco station in Hartford, Connecticut. Context aside, this is an odd one and it's pretty dangerous. A dude with a briefcase is filling up at a gas station and he's wearing roller skates. That man is Mike Dreschler. The year was 1956 and the motorized roller skate company of Detroit really thought they were onto something here. The roller skates only cost around $250, which today is around $2,400, and its max speed was 17 miles an hour, so it's not really a great deal at all. Now obviously this isn't a good idea. The image alone of the man pouring gasoline into Mike's backpack, no, we don't do that. The biggest problem here, aside from the, everything about it, was that they couldn't figure out brakes. Honestly, I'll take Heelys any day over these. Much more safe.
Coming in at number 9, we have telescope ghouls. Whoa, look up at the top of the James Webb Space Telescope. Do you see what I see? Are these the ghosts of dead astronauts or technicians? Or maybe they're alien apparitions? This photo by NASA's Chris Gunn is incredible, and he has aptly titled it Ghosts and Mirrors for obvious reasons. So it turns out that the picture taken in the Goddard Space Flight Center's Spacecraft System Development and Integration Facility clean room is taken with a super long exposure. All the while, ultraviolet lights were being shone over the telescope to look for contamination. Now the result is this spooky picture. Sounds like a reasonable explanation, right? Some may say too reasonable. Joking, but this telescope may well capture some spooky images of its very own in the future. It's the successor to Hubble, and it's off to explore the universe in March 2021. Any Lord of the Rings fans out there, stand up. How much does this exosolar planet look like the Eye of Sauron at number 8? Like, creepily so. Did J.R.R. Tolkien know about the formal hut when he wrote The Lord of the Rings in 1937? If he didn't, perhaps he foreshadowed it. Get a load of this picture. This is Fomalhaut B in orbit around Fomalhaut. The exoplanet is also known as Dagon. It's an extrasolar object and it orbits a star that gives it its name. How far away is this terrifying eye formation? Only 25 light years. The 2012 images from the Hubble Space Telescope are terrifying. The name Dagon in mythology is a Jewish deity that represents a half man, half fish. Just a side note there for you. Coming in at number 7, did NASA capture an alien moon base? And also, did they accidentally release pictures of it? According to some conspiracists, then yeah, they did. Have a look at these and tell me what you think. Is this alien evidence? Conspiracist YouTube channel Secure Team 10 claimed that these images were proof of an alien base on the moon. The YouTube channel has 1.7 million subscribers, so a lot of people are watching their content. Their channel is filled with moon conspiracies, and they think that these images are a smoking gun for NASA. UFologist and hoax buster Scott Brando said that the images used by Secure Team 10 were low quality and low resolution. He seemed to think that the images are just an optical illusion. Who knows though? Another classic from the Daily Express, we have alien astronauts caught on camera at number 6. Some think that Mars rover Curiosity captured aliens, others think that it's a wider spread conspiracy that humans are already on Mars. The first manned Mars mission is set to begin within the next 10 years, but some are saying that the photos taken by Curiosity and published by NASA already show that there are humans on the red planet. Some people think that these shadow images show astronauts working on the rover to repair it. Others say that the droids show humanoid-looking aliens. Now the conspiracists say that NASA didn't realize how much they were showing when the images were released into the public domain. So, is it aliens or are humans already up on Mars? If so, why would that be hidden from us? Or do these pictures have a more logical explanation? UFO conspiracist good old Scott C. Waring said that this just goes to show the public that the rover is being being maintained by humans on Mars, and that there are other spacecraft kept secret from the public that can carry peers to Mars in just a few minutes. You know what, Scott? I don't know about that one. Okay, these Death Eaters living out there in space terrify me at number 5. The Harry Potter fans in this video will probably be just as freaked out by this as I am. I don't like them. Get a load of what is lurking in the mist of the Carina Nebula. To me, these are straight up Death Eaters waiting to suck out my soul, but actually, they're supposed to be knots of dark molecular gas. Knots of dark molecular gas waiting to suck up my soul, right? These clouds of gas surround the Great Nebula in Carina, which used to be one of the brightest stars in the sky in the 1800s, but now it's significantly faded. This maybe lends credence to my whole sucking theory, right? Okay, fine, they probably aren't Death Eaters, but still, they're spooky. This picture freaks me out. Coming into number 4, we have the Hand of God. NASA released this X-ray image of light detected by NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory in 2014. Can you see why they called it the Hand of God? Because it kind of looks like, you know. So this is actually a pulsar wind nebula, a stellar corpse that spins rapidly, firing a particle wind. NASA themselves are mystified by the shape. Alongside the image on their website, they wrote, "One of the big mysteries of this object is whether the pulsar particles are interacting with the material in a specific way to make it look like a hand, or if the material is in fact shaped like a hand." Now, a lot of people do genuinely believe that this is God's mark in the universe, like the eye that cropped up earlier. Now, I'm not too convinced, but I'd love to know what you think. We have a famous Mars picture that caused a stir at number 3. We have Bigfoot on Mars. Mars's now defunct robot rover Spirit captured this image in late 2007. Who this? A Rudy Nudie alien lady or Bigfoot? Either way, aliens, right? This image boosted the life on Mars discussion, with many conspiracists saying that this image was proof. NASA explained the image is simply the pareidolia phenomena. This is where humans see faces when they aren't there. Analyzing Spirit's image, if this was an alien, it'd be pretty small, according to Phil Platt of Bad Astronomy website. Anyway, NASA says it's nothing more than a Martian rock, although
Would I rather buy 80 expensive, annoying, tiny cartridges or use these replacement ink bottles and save up to
NASA would say that, wouldn't they? Probably because it is just a rock, right? Coming into number 2, we have this screaming skull. It's pretty terrifying. This screaming skull was another of NASA's Halloween releases, this time from the year 2000. The haunting image was taken from the orbiting Chandra Observatory and is one of a cluster of galaxies known as Perseus. You can see Perseus right here in X-ray vision. The Perseus cluster contains thousands upon thousands of galaxies, so we can't really truly comprehend this picture. It's just much more than a spooky picture than what looks like a skull. It's a lot going on there. While the image is already pretty spooky, it gets scarier when you realize that the bright spot in the X-ray is a black hole. Not to worry though, this scary skull cluster is 320 million light years away. Finally, at number 1, we have a truly iconic and somewhat infamous picture, the Viking 1 faces on Mars. This is one of the most famous NASA images out there and has been used as absolute fuel to conspiracy theorists' fire over the past 40 years. That was since the picture was taken in July 1976. The snap was taken by NASA's Viking 1 spacecraft and seemed to show the shadowy likeness of a human face, only this face is 2 miles long. Taken in the Cydonia region of Mars, the image was sent back to mission controllers at the Jet Propulsion Lab. At the time, theorists went wild, saying that it was evidence of an ancient civilization on Mars. Now, the image did quite look like an Egyptian pharaoh after all. NASA explained that the image was just a Martian messer with the sunlight playing tricks. NASA later went back with the Mars orbiter camera, but people simply explained the lack of face that time by saying that it was a cloudy day and the alien detail couldn't be seen. I don't know, I'm thinking it probably was just a trick of the light.
within 20 minutes of setting sail, and it claimed the lives of 30 souls on board. How tragic is that? Only 20 minutes and it was gone. The Swedish Navy launched the ship August 10th, 1628, and it was once considered a high-tech warship, even referred to as spectacular. So what happened? How did this thing sink in 20 minutes? That's crazy. Well, the first rush of wind caught it off guard and it swayed a bit. The second rush of wind sank it. There's gotta be more. There was a crowd around and everything to send it off, but the 64 bronze cannons that were installed during the rushed process of building the ship were too heavy. That's why it sank. And the lack of oxygen in the water allowed for its rediscovery to continue its story. The Vasa was built with carvings all around the wood, carvings centered around the king at the time, King Gustav II. So when the wreck was rediscovered in 1961, 95% of the wood was still intact, so it still tells a story. Number 5. Under the ice. This dark discovery was pretty recent. Recent as in October 2021. The Hakon project is one I would never sign up for personally, but I'm surprised it's taken this long to do something along these lines. The Hakon project is a group of around 30 scientists. They teamed up to send a deep sea robot 13,000 feet below the icy surface of the Arctic Ocean. This was the first time we got to see the hidden volcanic vents that have been hiding for centuries, because obviously it's that deep and that cold, and now we have the resources and people who are brave enough to go and camp out in the Arctic to go explore. That's crazy. Number 4, ancient Greek shipwreck. I remember hearing about this back in 2018, so I'm excited I get to throw it on a list. The oldest shipwreck discovered in the Black Sea. It looks like it sank 50 years ago.
Shop limited time holiday deals today at ring.com.
Give the next level of nerds a spin. Nerds Gummy Clusters. Shake things up.
Ago, but actually this ship is from 400 BC. It's an ancient Greek trading vessel and it's not very large, but somehow this thing is very mighty. 2,400 years later, over a mile below the surface, the lack of oxygen again actually preserved this ship. That's why it looks not ancient. John Adams, principal investigator with the Black Sea Marine Archaeology Project, describes the findings as something he never thought was even possible. Yeah, more than fair. That long ago, like, we're still trying to figure out the pyramids. We're like, oh my god, this thing's just chilling there the whole time. Just a fish is staring at it. This discovery changed what we knew about seafaring in the ancient world. The oldest intact shipwreck known to mankind. That's not a bad title. Another 2,000 years we'll find nothing but plastic on the bottom of our oceans. Number 3, underwater river. We've heard about this one at some point, I'm sure, but how is this even a real thing? How is this possible? What are we looking at? What is this? Back in 2016, researchers working in the Black Sea found these very strong currents. Currents of water flowing at the bottom of the sea like its own river almost. If this 115-foot deep river was on land instead of, well, under the Black Sea, it would be ranked number 6 in the world for the amount of volume alone that's constantly rushing through it. So pretty impressive. The river carries heavy sediments along the seafloor, hence why it makes those grooves over time. And yeah, over time those currents carve out their own path, and now it's massive and extremely powerful and unstoppable. But luckily for us, you need a deep sea rover to take a good look, so you're not gonna fall in anytime soon. Number 2, deep waste. I mentioned some deep sea plastic on this channel before, but this 2021 discovery is just a new low, pun intended. Right off the coast of LA, hiding around 4,000 feet below the ocean's surface, sitting there for quite a long time, were literal barrels of garbage, just waste. The plume of evil coming off of these things also, it looks like a nuclear wasteland. Probably because it is a literal nuclear wasteland. How horrible is that? There weren't 30 or 40 of these barrels also, in case you're wondering. There were thousands. Around 27,000 were found. 2 weeks of searching with subs. What a sad expedition that must have been. Oh my. These barrels were dropping into the ocean around 1947 to around 1961. That's the window of time. You'd think after barrel 5,000, somebody would be like, this feels wrong. I don't know. And finally, number 1. Beneath a glacier. We had to end this part 3 on some new footage from the bottom of an Antarctic glacier. And this glacier also, in case you're wondering, is the size of Florida. So if you're imagining like a big ice cube, it's a bit bigger than that, just a little bit. This is like finding the bottom of a continent. This thing is massive. And we sent a rover underneath all of it. How scary is that? If it were to collapse, our sea levels would rise 10 feet, just to give you an idea of how big it is. And in 2019, researchers drilled 2,300 feet right through the Thwaites Glacier and dropped a robot with a camera down, and then they just roamed around. And they saw this. Hold your breath. This is the first time we've ever seen the grounding zone of a massive glacier. There's only 1 meter of space between the bottom of the glacier and the rocky seafloor. Could you go down there? I don't think I could. I would swim underneath it and pretend like I'm lifting it up, you know? Just kidding. I wouldn't even get into the submarine to go down this hole. Not a chance. Also, can we not drill through a glacier the size of Florida? Just sounds like a bad idea. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe leave this project alone.
Starting off this countdown, we have the secret underground community. Believe it or not, but there is a group of urban explorers that like to hang out in the Paris catacombs. They call themselves the Cataphiles, and they sneak into the tunnels, evade the police, and then go exploring. In fact, they have claimed a number of sections as their own, marking it with murals and graffiti. Not only that, but they have found secret ways to get into the catacombs. Plus, they've started mapping the whole place out so that other explorers don't get lost. Only problem is that this is a very dangerous hobby. Since they are entering restricted areas in the catacombs, they have to watch out for crumbling walls, falling rocks, even pools of water. I don't know about you, but I prefer to spend my time with the living and not the dead. In our 9th spot, we have the Lost Girl. In 2005, a group of teens illegally snuck into the catacombs on New Year's. Sadly, they all didn't make it out alive. They all were drinking and having a blast when one of their friends, Masha, wandered off alone. When they finally realized she had disappeared, they went out looking for her but couldn't find her. No one knew what happened to her until 4 months later. That's when a group of boys were exploring the catacombs when they stumbled upon her frozen body. Since she was drunk, she wandered off to another section of the catacombs and then got lost and froze to death. How heartbreaking. Coming in at number 8, we have Philibert Aspel. Philibert Aspel was a doorkeeper at the Val de Grace Hospital during the French Revolution. And the hotel actually had a staircase located in the courtyard that would lead to the catacombs. So one night in November of 1793, Philibert descended into the catacombs to retrieve a bottle of liquor stored down there. However, he only brought one candle with him and it was not enough to light the way. Eventually it blew out and he was down there in pitch black. Being semi-intoxicated, he stumbled around the catacombs lost. For 11 years, no one knew what happened to him. That was until 1804 when his body was found. He was identified by the hospital keyring hanging from his belt. Moving on to number 7, we have the Whispering Walls. A number of explorers have claimed that no one should ever be in the Paris catacombs after midnight. For if you are, then the walls will begin to speak. People have claimed to have heard disembodied voices coming from the catacombs. These voices confuse them and try to persuade them to travel deeper and deeper into the catacombs until you're in too far that you're lost and you can't escape. Actually, fun fact, they use this as inspiration for the movie As Above, So Below, which takes place in the Paris catacombs. In our 6th spot today, we have the camera system. In 2004, a group of French police explored some of the restricted areas of the Paris catacombs. And that's when they discovered something truly terrifying. First, they found a PA system that when triggered would play sounds of guard dogs barking. Then they found a full-on bar, living area, workshop, lounge, and cinema with space to fit 20 people. Like what? Not only that, but whoever created this little home setup was stealing other people's electricity from above. The creepiest part is that they had a full-on security camera set up, and the police soon realized that they were being watched. They left to get a bigger team to further investigate the area, but by the time they got back, everything was gone. The only thing left was a note that read, "Don't search." We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Decoeul. Decoeul is the name of a very mysterious man. We don't know much about him, but we do know that he was a veteran of the French army, and he was also an artist. In fact, he created a number of sculptures for the catacombs. However, this eventually led to his death. During the construction of one of his sculptures, a part of it fell and crushed him completely. It's said that to this day, his soul wanders the catacombs. In fact, people have seen him down there before. In our 4th spot today, we have the Crypt of Passions. The Crypt of Passions, located in the ossuary, is a pillar that is covered in skulls to the point that it's just completely concealed. The skulls end up forming what looks like a barrel, which is creepy for a number of reasons. Just take in, those are real skulls. You're surrounded by people who used to be living, and most of them died in tragic ways, and then their bones were used for an art display. A number of people who have visited this area in the catacombs have reported feeling very uneasy around the Crypt of Passion. It's believed that some of the souls that were placed there have not found peace. I mean, in some cultures, they believe that a proper burial must be done with a tomb marker, or else the soul will never be able to rest or go to the afterlife. However, that was not possible at the time. The catacombs were built because grave overcrowding was a serious issue back then, among other things. In our 3rd spot today, we have the scratch marks. There's this really creepy area in the Paris catacombs where it's just a wall of scratches. Like, it looks as if bodies rose from the dead and tried to scratch their way out. It's a creepy touch to the place, that's for sure. Moving on to number 2, we have the lost tape. Now, I'm sure all of you have heard about this urban legend before, and in fact it also inspired the movie As Above, So Below. And it might not even be a legend, it might be real, but to this day, no one knows. Once upon a time, in 1990, a weird dusty camcorder was discovered in the catacombs. The camera appeared to have been there for quite some time, so they decided to inspect it. What was found on it was very disturbing. The video was of an unidentified male explorer wandering around the catacombs. While down there, we see him interacting with the skulls around him. But then something spooks the man and he ends up growing paranoid and panicked. At one point, he drops the camera and just runs away. Sadly, he never made it out alive. This tape contains the final moments of his life. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the criminals. In 2017, it was discovered that a group of robbers used the catacombs to break into an apartment. Basically, they figured out that the catacombs were right under an apartment vault. So they drilled their way in through the limestone and entered the apartment to steal over 300 bottles of vintage wine. In total, they valued at close to 250,000 euros. Isn't that insane?
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the earthquake detector. In 132 AD, a man named Zhang Hen was able to create the first earthquake detector called the seismoscope. Far ahead of its time, this creation was incredibly accurate and is actually comparable in efficiency to those that we use now. Apparently, in 138, this tool detected an earthquake that was a ways away, and at the time nobody believed it and dismissed the warning. A few days later, a messenger arrived and asked for help, which confirmed that this thing really did accurately detect an earthquake and where it was coming from. Researchers still aren't sure exactly how it works, which is so crazy, but I guess some things are just meant to be a mystery. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Gangkar Puensum. This mountain is the largest mountain that has been unclimbed by humans and stands at a height of 7,570 meters or 24,836 feet. Studies and measurements of this mountain started 100 years ago in 1922, but it wasn't until much more recently that we began to acquire actually accurate details about it. The name of the mountain means White Peak of the Three Spiritual Brothers, which becomes an important part of why this mountain remains unclimbed. In 1983, the mountain became open for mountaineering, but between 1985 and 1986, there were 4 separate expeditions who tried to summit it and failed. Part of the reason why these expeditions failed were because there were disputes on the location and there was just inaccurate information, so the first group who tried to summit it couldn't even find the mountain at all. In 1994, the climbing of mountains in Bhutan higher than 6,000 meters became prohibited due to spiritual beliefs, and in 2003, mountaineering became prohibited entirely. This is why the mountain remains unsummited, and while I'm sure it would be an amazing expedition for climbers, who knows what is going on up there in terms of ecology due to it being left alone. In our number 8 spot today, we have the ancient seabed. A seabed that was once located at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean was found buried hundreds of miles beneath China. This slab of rock once found its home at the top of the lithosphere, which is the outermost layer of the Earth. How did it get hundreds of miles below China? Well, it got pushed down by a neighboring tectonic plate in what is called a subduction event. This discovery was so notable because scientists had never detected a subduction event so deep within the surface of the planet. When they found this rock slab, it was still continuing its descent towards the mantle of the Earth. I wonder if one day it will come back to the surface again. In our number 7 spot today, we have a gibbon skull. Gibbons are a type of ape that are often characterized by their swinging ability coupled with their loud, bright calls, and the 8th century Chinese poet Li Bai described their voices as they swung past the Yangtze River. But here's the thing. Today, there are no gibbons that live anywhere near the river. Also, the gibbons that exist now have different fur patterns from the ones that are often depicted in classical Chinese paintings. This has led experts to believe that there must have been another kind of gibbon that has now vanished, and physical evidence of this gibbon might have turned up in the most unexpected place: a tomb. This tomb, which was built for the grandmother of the first emperor of China nearly 2,300 years ago, contained a skull and a jawbone so distinct that scientists believed they must have belonged to a member of this now extinct gibbon genus. Many surviving gibbon species are now facing extinction, so it is likely that there were others in the past who unfortunately faced the same kind of fate. In our number 6 spot today, we have the green gel. This is a discovery that was made by the U-22 rover, which is currently exploring our wonderful moon. On Lunar Day 8 last year, which began on July 25th, the rover was doing its thing, finding its way through an area that was filled with a bunch of small impact craters. On July 28th, as the team here on Earth was preparing to power down the rover for its little midday nap, which is meant to protect the machine from high temperatures and radiation from the sun, one member of the team was checking over some images that were taken by the rover's main camera, and they spotted a small crater that seemed like it contained some sort of material that had a color and a sort of luster that was significantly different from the lunar area surrounding it. The team then changed the plans they had for the rover and decided that instead of going west, which was next on the schedule, they would instead take a little detour to check out this mystery material. The rover carefully made its way over to the crater and examined it with both its visible and near-infrared spectrometer, which is a thing that detects lights that are scattered or reflected off of a material, which helps to reveal what they're made up of. For a while, no one knew exactly what the substance was, and it was only being described as being gel-like and being a weird color, but after almost a year of more research, it was finally identified. It's rock. More specifically, rock that was melted together, most likely in the heat of impact from a meteorite. It's insane that something like that created a dark green, glistening impact melt, but it's also very cool. I'm just glad that this is one mystery that we got to the bottom of. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Gobi Desert structure. This is one discovery that had conspiracy theorists' minds absolutely swirling. About a decade ago, someone was searching through some Google Maps images when they found a mysterious array of structures and patterns that appeared to be etched into the surface of the Gobi Desert, which is, of course, located in China. The structures are reminiscent of geoliths, but they are seemingly much more modern and newly created. The speculation of what this structure could be or why it was created went wild, with people saying that they were street maps of American cities or messages either to or from some sort of extraterrestrials. The list of bizarre theories just goes on. While this is still sort of conspiracy sounding, this is likely the most reasonable explanation for what these structures are, and that is that these structures are used to help calibrate China's spy and radar satellites. To be fair, this does make a lot of sense, and I don't have any other ideas on what it could be for, so. In our number 4 spot today, we have the droughts. Ancient drawings and writings were found covering the walls of the Dayu Cave, which is located in central China, and a lot of them detail different droughts and such that were experienced during the time of their writing. According to these drawings, people would come to the cave for either water or to pray for rain in times of drought. The writings reveal some of the horrors that the people of the time experienced while going through these periods of drought, including severe starvation, social instability, and conflict between government and citizens. While these cave writings show us a difficult time in history, researchers say that the stalagmites that were also found in the cave might show a grim prediction for the future. Since these are formed by dripping water and they form sort of rings, like how trees do, and these rings can give us insights into different things. Based on the patterns of these rings, scientists were able to corroborate the things that the cave writings were saying, but they were also able to make a grim prediction for the future, which is that unfortunately the region may again see one of these catastrophic droughts, this time in the late 2030s. In our number 3 spot today, we have the ruins. Taking over our number 3 spot today, we have the most recent discovery on this list. While archaeologists were digging at one of the most important archaeological sites in China just earlier this year, they found a bronze altar as well as a dragon with a pig's nose, among many other things, in a couple of the sacrificial pits that are seen at this site. In fact, they said the findings were made in sacrificial pits 7 and 8, to which I have to ask, how many are there? Another highlight of the new finds was a bronze box with a tortoise-shaped lid. Inside, this box contained jade artifacts, and even traces of silk fabric were found around it. These finds are so astonishing because every little piece gives us so much insight into the buried secrets of the ancient Chinese civilization. In our number 2 spot today, we have an ancient mystery. While excavating a tomb in China, the team discovered the skeleton of a young man that was riddled with wounds, giving clues as to how he died. The man is estimated to have been about 25 25 years old at the time of his death, and it is thought that he was harmed and then thrown into the Tomb Raider shaft while still alive, which is absolutely gruesome. It is believed that this crime took place between 640 and 680 AD. It appears as though he wasn't a thief because the shaft had begun to be refilled with soil by the time of his death, so we really aren't sure why this young man met this cruel fate. As a true crime enthusiast myself, this is absolutely fascinating, and I wish we could find some answers to bring this guy's story full circle, but sometimes these things are just destined to stay a secret. In our number 1 spot today, we have the palace. Archaeologists and researchers were certainly baffled a few years ago when they were digging beneath the foundation of the Lifang Pagoda, which sits on Lifang Mountain. Well, digging isn't exactly the right word. To be honest, there was a huge stone or boulder that weighed over 1,500 pounds that was lifted away, which then revealed a stone tablet. Once this tablet was lifted, it revealed a huge underground palace. Inside this palace, researchers found many hidden treasures that included a Buddhist statue, bronze mirrors, coins, and there was also a rusty iron case that was found during the initial discovery, which researchers believe held many relics. The pagoda that sat on top of this hidden palace was first completed in 976 AD, so it is thought that this area remained untouched from at least then until its modern discovery.
Number 10. Dragon of Death. We all know that millions of years ago, dinosaurs roamed the earth before they became extinct. Scientists are constantly working to put together the fossils and remains that they have found and discover new species. One of the ones that was discovered recently has been described as the Dragon of Death. It was a flying reptile like a pterodactyl that is described as having been the size of a bus. Fully extended, its wings measured 30 feet from one tip to the other, and they were apparently as tall as giraffes. The leader on the project said that its size defies the limits of our biological understanding. The remains were discovered in the mountains of Argentina, and the specimen is apparently around 86 million years old, being preserved within the rocks. It's incredible to think of the sheer size of some species of dinosaurs and to imagine them compared to ourselves. With all the talk of scientists wanting to bring certain animal species back from extinction, it may not be long until we have a real-life Jurassic Park. Number 9. Haunted idols. Burial sites often fall victim to grave robberies, things being stolen from the dead and defenseless. In May of this year, a group stole 16 statues from a 300-year-old temple, but what they stole caused them to regret their decision. After less than a week, 14 of the 16 stolen statues reappeared on the doorstep of the temple's chief priest, returned in fine condition. The thieves left a letter of confession for stealing the statues and said that they were returning them because they felt they had become cursed by the idols. The note said, "We have not been able to sleep, eat, and live peacefully. We are fed up with the scary dreams and are returning your valuables." Having the idols around seemed to put a haunted curse on the thieves, though we can only guess whether the statues were totally haunted or were simply punishing the thieves for their actions. Reportedly, cursed objects are nothing new and pop up all over the place, so it's probably best if you just keep your hands to yourself. Number 8. Skeleton. When